Chapter 1408. First time at the Een residence. 2. However, she didn't show the slightest dissatisfaction on her face. She even raised her beautiful eyes to look around the room she was in. This room could only be described in 2 words, and that was luxurious. The decorations in the room were all precious and exquisite. Even a small piece of decoration was so exquisite that no one could find fault with it. The spiritual qi in the room was also very dense. Lung Ruoxue was very sure that there was a spirit gathering array in the small room. Even if a spirit gathering array had to be set up, most of them would be set up in the courtyard. Perhaps only the 8 great divine regions' long-established families would be able to set up a spirit gathering array in a room, because it was simply too extravagant. Lung Ruoxue got down from the bed and walked to the window. Looking at the beautiful flowers in the courtyard, her depressed mood was lifted by quite a bit. It seemed that the old man had taken good care of her. Even though he had kidnapped her, he had arranged a place for her to stay, and she was very satisfied with it. Just as she was about to push open the door and leave, she was stopped by another maidservant. "I'm sorry, miss. Without the permission of the master, you cannot leave the room," the maidservant said in fear and trepidation. The family head had instructed them to treat this young lady well and give her whatever she wanted, but she was not allowed to leave the room. Therefore, they absolutely did not dare to disobey the family head's words. "Can't I just bask in the sun in the courtyard?" Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and asked indifferently. She didn't expect that old man to restrict her movements. What did he mean by this? He had kidnapped her, arranged such a good place for her to stay, and even forbade her from going out. Oh, could it be that the old man wanted to learn from other people and hide his mistress in a golden house? Thinking of this, she couldn't help but feel a chill. This has to be approved by the master, the maidservant said carefully. "Then you should go ask him now. I'm going out to get some sun." Lung Ruoxue casually found a chair and sat down as she spoke. Master is busy now. No one is allowed to disturb him," the maidservant said softly, afraid that Lung Ruoxue would blame her. "Is there something? That's strange. Why did he not ask about her after kidnapping her?" Although this room was very luxurious, he didn't want to be a canary in a cage. Naturally, he didn't want to stay in the room all the time. All right, where did the little one go? Since the little guy was able to bring her out of the main residence, he should have also come to the divine realm with that old man, right? If only the little one was here, then she could go wherever she wanted. However, that old man probably wouldn't return the little one to her. It seemed like she had to think of a good way to get the little one back from the old man's hands. After all, he was her beastie. As for the punishment for the little one, she could only talk about it in the future. "Where's my beastie?" Thinking of Xiao Budian, Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. "What beastie?" The maidservants were a little puzzled. They didn't see this young lady bring any beast. "A little white fox came with me. You don't know, but your master should know, so you should go ask him. I want my beastie." Lung Ruoxue smiled as she reminded him. When the 2 maidservants heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they looked at each other. Then, one of them turned around and left the room. When Lung Ruoxue saw that the maidservant had left, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Oomph. She even lied to her that the family head had something to do. Just now she said she wanted to bask in the sun. Why didn't she go and ask? Now that she heard that she wanted her own beastie, she thought of going. Did she think she was an idiot? Actually, she had wronged the maidservant a little. Before the master of the Een family left, he had instructed that Lung Ruoxue could have anything she wanted, other than leaving the room. If she wanted her own magical beast, it was also within the scope of what she wanted. The maidservant had never seen any magical beast, and Lung Ruoxue had said it so firmly. Thus, the maidservant had no choice but to go and ask the master for an explanation. The maidservant came to the main courtyard where the family head was. After reporting, she entered the family head's study room with some fear and stood in front of the desk. "What's up? Didn't I tell you not to disturb me if there's nothing important?" The master of the Een family looked up at the frightened servant girl and said coldly, "Master, it's about the young lady you brought back." The maidservant said in a low voice, "What is it?" The master of the Een family narrowed his eyes and thought to himself, It seems that the little girl has woken up. However, the little girl is quite restless. She actually asked the maidservant to come and find him as soon as she woke up. Sigh, that little fellow must be very angry. That young lady said that she wanted her own beastie. The maidservant quickly said, Beastie. The master of the Een family frowned and didn't react for a moment. It's a little white fox. The maidservant said, Oh, Master Een finally understood. So that little girl was talking about Xiao Budian. However, he really couldn't give Xiao Budian to her. What if she used Xiao Budian to leave this place? Then wouldn't his efforts be in vain? Thinking of this, he said to the maidservant, Go back and tell that young lady that I didn't see any white fox. He didn't see the fox. He only had one fox here. Yes. The maidservant immediately turned around and left when she heard the patriarch's words. However, when a maidservant went back to relay the master's words, Lung Ruoxu's reaction was rather calm. This was because she had already expected that the old man would not return Xiao Budian to her. The main reason was that he was afraid that she would use Xiao Budian to leave this place. Didn't you ask your family head to tell him that I want to go to the courtyard to bask in the sun? Lung Ruoxu looked at the maidservant in front of her and asked indifferently. The maidservant was at a loss for words. She had never thought of asking about this matter. In front of the family head, she was extremely nervous and her mind was blank. They'll have to trouble you to make another trip. Ask that old man. I want to go out and bask in the sun. Lung Ruoxu requested. She really wasn't trying to make things difficult for this maidservant. She was simply dazed in her room. All right then. This time, the maidservant didn't use the family head's matters as an excuse. Instead, she responded directly and then turned to leave. When a master of the Een family saw the servant girl in front of him again, he sighed and asked helplessly, What is it now? Master, that young lady wants to go to the courtyard to bask in the sun. The maidservant said in a very soft voice. Chapter 1409. First time at the Een residence. 3. Just this. The master of the Een family asked, raising his eyebrows. Yes. The maidservant nodded. Then let her go. However, you're not allowed to leave the courtyard. The master of the Een family thought for a moment. It seemed that it was impossible for him to make the little girl stay in the room obediently. Yes. After obtaining the approval of the patriarch, the servant girl immediately bowed and left. When they returned to Lung Ruoxu's courtyard, the maidservant told her the news. Lung Ruoxu immediately left her room and walked around the courtyard. After breathing in some fresh air, she was in a good mood. However, when she wanted to lie down in the courtyard to bask in the sun, she realized that there was no place to lie down. Go and get me a recliner. Lung Ruoxu instructed her maidservant. Deck chair? Miss, we don't have a recliner. A maidservant said. Although they had heard of deck chairs, no one in the divine realm would use such a thing. That was because many gods did not need to rest. Even if they wanted to sleep, they would do so in their rooms. No one would want to get a chair and lie outside. You don't even have a recliner? Lung Ruoxu asked in disbelief. Her beautiful eyes revealed a trace of disdain. The people of the divine realm really don't know how to enjoy life. I really don't know what they do every day. Don't tell me they cultivate all day. Oh, seeing that the strength of these two maidservants was above her, it was very possible. When the two maidservants received Lung Ruoxu's gaze, they actually felt inferior for a moment. They did not know what was wrong with them. It shouldn't be embarrassing to not prepare a recliner, right? However, when they saw this young lattice gaze, they felt as if they had done something shameful. This was really too strange. Go find your master and get me a chair. Lung Ruoxu ordered without any reservations. Yes. The maidservant was very helpless. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. Woo! This young lady really knew how to torment people. In just a short while, she had run to see the family head twice. Including this time, it was the third time. She didn't know if the family head would be angry when he saw her again. With a nervous heart, the maidservant walked to the main courtyard with small steps. When the guards on duty in the courtyard saw her, their expressions were very strange, but they still dutifully went to report on her behalf. Looking at the servant girl who was standing in front of him once again, Master Yi miraculously wasn't angry. Based on his understanding of Lung Ruoxue, if that little girl didn't find trouble for him, she wouldn't be her. This was also within his expectations. That was why he had instructed the maidservant not to disturb him, unless it was something important. What is it now? The master of the Yin family asked. Master, that young lady want a chair. The maidservant said, choking with sobs. Facing the family head's gaze, she felt her legs tremble. You're looking for me for such a small matter? You could go directly to the butler. The master of the Yin family suppressed his anger and said, Fuck, he thought it was something difficult to do. This was just a small matter. He had already ordered that no matter what that girl wanted, he would give it to her. Why was he still asking him? This made him seriously doubt the ability of his family members. It was that young lady who told me to come and find the family head. The maidservant said in a low voice, If she wants you to look for her, then look for her. Do you have a brain? In the future, if there's such a thing, just look for the butler and don't bother me. Master Yin couldn't take it anymore. He had asked the butler to arrange for 2 smart servant girls to serve Lung Ruoxue, but who knew that they were the ones the butler had chosen for him? How useless. Yes. The maidservant was even more afraid after being yelled at by the family head. After bowing with a trembling body, she ran out of the family head's study room. Looking at the back of the maidservant, the guards in the courtyard thought that she had been scolded by the master. However, this was also normal. Who asked this maidservant to come 3 times in such a short time? If he was the head of the family, he would also go crazy. The maidservant left the main courtyard, calmed her mind, and went to find the Yin family's head butler. After the head butler heard the maidservant's words, he frowned with some embarrassment. Things like a reclining chair were very common. A family like theirs would not have it prepared at all. How could he find it in such a short time? Go and tell that lady that we didn't prepare a recliner. They'll get it for her tomorrow. The Yin clan's head butler said after some thought. The clan head had instructed that they were not to neglect this young lady who lived in Bright Creek Garden. Therefore, he could not ignore Lung Ruoxue's request. Head butler, they'll have to trouble you to get it for Miss right now. She's very anxious. The maidservant begged. In fact, she was too embarrassed to say it. If they couldn't get the reclining chair back, people would despise their Yin family even more. Woo! Although the young lady didn't say this clearly, as long as one wasn't a fool, they could see that the young lady was dissatisfied with their family's lack of a reclining chair. All right then, they'll think of a way. The Yin family's head butler was helpless. Where was he supposed to find a recliner at this time? Why did that young lady have to ask for such a simple thing? To be honest, there were pitifully few deck chairs in the divine realm. With the head butler's promise, the maidservant felt at ease and returned to Lung Ruoxue's residence, Mingxi Garden. When they arrived at Mingxi Garden, the maidservant realized that Lung Ruoxue had actually gotten a net-like bed from God knows where and tied it to the middle of 2 giant trees. She was lying on the bed, while the other maidservant was constantly attending to her by the side. Looking at Lung Ruoxue's current state, the maidservant could not help but sigh in her heart. This young lady really knew how to enjoy life. Miss Embark. The maidservant respectfully walked to Lung Ruoxue's side. Yes, didn't you get my recliner? Lung Ruoxue looked at the maidservant's expression and said, Miss, the butler is already gone to get it. It will probably take a while before he can get it. The maidservant said honestly, I can't believe the Yin family of the 8 divine domains doesn't even have a chair. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but sigh. Her face was still filled with sympathy. When the 2 maidservants beside Lung Ruoxue heard her words, they could not help but break out in cold sweat. They could not help but shiver. It was not just their Yin clan that would not have it. The other clans would not have it either, right? Chapter 14:10. First time at the Yin residence. I don't think I should make things difficult for you. Just make do with this hammock. Lung Ruoxue mumbled to herself. Actually, she had a reclining chair in her bracelet. However, she would not take it out to use it. Who asked her to deliberately torment them? She felt that she was really bad. Lung Ruoxue's words made the 2 maidservants feel extremely depressed. However, they did not dare to argue with her. Hence, they could only stand beside Lung Ruoxue without saying a word, acting as wooden stakes. After a long time, the two maidservants did not say another word. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, her mind kept spinning. Then, she calmly ordered, "What kind of delicious fruits do you have in the divine realm? Go and get some for me." When the two maidservants heard Lung Ruoxue's request, they looked at each other with a troubled expression. Then, one of the maidservants said, "Miss, the fruits in the god world are very expensive, so—" Before the maidservant could finish her sentence, Lung Ruoxue interrupted her. "So you can't afford it?" Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly, but the expression on her face was still one of disdain. "No, it's not that we can't afford it, but there's a limit to the amount we can eat every day," the maidservant said hurriedly. The number of fruits bought by the clan every day was limited, and only those directly related to the clan were qualified to eat those fruits. If others wanted to taste them, unless there was an important clan event, they could only buy them with their own money. Although the fruits in the divine realm also contained a lot of divine power, not many people were willing to spend an expensive price to buy those fruits. They would rather save the money to buy more pills for self-defense. "Oh, what's the limit for me?" Lung Ruoxue asked indifferently. It seemed like it wasn't good to have too many people from a big family clan. There was a limit to the amount of fruits she could eat. Luckily, she wasn't born into such a big family clan. Otherwise, she would have been suffocated to death. Only the direct descendants of the family are entitled to eat fresh fruits every day, the maidservant said in a small voice, somewhat embarrassed. "Didn't your clan head say that I can have whatever I want? Is it because I'm not a member of the Een family that I can't eat fruits?" Lung Ruoxue put on a straight face and pretended to be displeased. "I'll go get some fruit from the butler." "Miss, please wait a moment." When the servant girl who had been running errands heard Lung Ruoxue's words, she quickly replied, "That's right. How could they have forgotten about this?" The family head had indeed said that they could give this young lady whatever she wanted and that they must satisfy her requests. Since the family head had said it first, then what this young lady wanted was reasonable. After the maidservant left, Lung Ruoxue looked at the maidservant who had stayed by her side and asked with a faint smile, "Did I make things difficult for you?" "No, I didn't." Even if Lung Ruoxue had really made things difficult for them, they wouldn't dare to say anything. Moreover, compared to the other young ladies from the direct line of descent, this young lady was much easier to serve. Although this young lady had a lot of requests, at least she didn't beat or scold them. As for the maidservants who served these young ladies from the direct line, it was common for them to be their master's punching bags. "What are your names?" Lung Ruoxue asked softly. "This servant's name is Lotus Seed, and the other one is Grape," the maidservant quickly replied when she heard Lung Ruoxue's words. "Oh!" When Lung Ruoxue heard the names of the two maidservants, 2 drops of cold sweat rolled down her forehead. She couldn't help but wonder in her heart, who came up with such creative names? Why did it have to do with food? He was lazier than her. Oh, could this be the masterpiece of the Een family's master? Are the maids of the Een clan all named after food and fruits? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. How did Miss know? Lotus Seed was surprised. I was just randomly guessing. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. She didn't think that it would really be like this. When a maidservant heard that Lung Ruoxue had only made a casual guess, she thought to herself, this young lady is really too smart to be able to guess this. Fortunately, Lung Ruoxue didn't know Lotus Seed's inner thoughts, let alone know that Lotus Seed was complimenting her intelligence in her heart. Otherwise, she would have been depressed. This was simply too simple. Anyone could guess what was going on with just a little association. Just as Lung Ruoxue and Lotus Seed were chatting, Grape came back. The Grape bowed to Lung Ruoxue and then took out a few beautiful red fruits from her storage ring. The fruits were oval in shape and emitted an alluring fragrance. Just by looking at them, one could tell that they were delicious. Lung Ruoxue did not have such fruits in her bracelet. What kind of fruit is this? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. Chapter 1411. The Savage Master and Servant. 1. This is called Spiritual Mist. It's a type of fruit that only grows on the spiritual mist mountain of our divine realm. The mountain is tall and steep with a majestic aura. It's extremely dangerous, but this spiritual mist fruit can only grow on the highest peak of the mountain. As a result, it's extremely difficult to pick, so it's rather expensive. Although this fruit is small, it contains an extremely abundant amount of spiritual energy, so it's very popular. Grape explained, "This fruit isn't something that ordinary deities can afford." Lung Ruashu asked, "The spiritual chi in the spirit mist fruit was not bad. However, compared to the ones in her bracelet, it was obviously not just one grade lower. After all, according to Qing Ju, the fruit trees that Master had chosen were the best in all the realms. Yes, other than the Divine Lord's estate, our 8 great divine regions, and some of the top families, it's hard for the other small and medium-sized families to afford such expensive fruits." Grape nodded. In fact, people who specialized in picking these fruits would send them directly to them after they picked them. However, the number of fruits they could pick every day was different. Their Yin family had once wanted to send people to the Spirit Fog Mountain to pick the Spirit Fog fruit, but they found that the cost was too high and gave up. This was also one of the reasons why the Spirit Fog fruit was so expensive. Lung Ruashua picked up a red fruit that was only the size of her fist and observed it. This fruit was truly beautiful. It was red and crystal clear, and the skin was glowing with a faint white light. The skin was very thin, and one could even see the liquid flowing inside the fruit. She opened her mouth and took a small bite. In an instant, the fragrance of the fruit filled her entire mouth. The fruit was extremely sweet, and the liquid flowed down her throat. Instantly, she felt a warm feeling in her 5 viscera and 6 bowels. That was the flow of spiritual energy in his dantian. This feeling was really good. "Miss, this fruit is pretty good, right?" Grape watched as Lung Ruashua ate the spirit mist fruit and asked with a face full of anticipation. He even unconsciously swallowed his saliva. "It's passable," Lung Ruashua said with dissatisfaction. Even though this spirit mist fruit was very sweet and the spiritual energy was considered rich, it was still a little lacking compared to the fruits in her bracelet. However, it was still considered pretty good. Ugh, and this was just passable? Grape and lotus seed felt as if they were about to faint. One must know that the spirit mist fruit was not something that ordinary people could afford to eat. However, such a good fruit was only passable in the eyes of this young lady. Could it be that this young lady had eaten something even better? "Oh, I really don't know who this young lady is. How can she be so arrogant?" The 2 maidservants could not understand. "You 2 eat too." Lung Ruashua pointed at the remaining fruits. "This, young miss, we are only servants. We are not qualified to eat the spirit mist fruit." When Grape and Lotus Seed heard Lung Ruakshu's words, their hearts were filled with joy. However, they immediately remembered their identities. If others knew that they had eaten the spirit mist fruit, they would definitely not let them off. Hence, even though they coveted the fruit, they did not dare to touch it. "Do these fruits belong to me?" Lung Ruashu asked with a smile. "Of course it's Miss S. The butler specially gave it to Miss." Although Grape did not understand the meaning behind Lung Ruakshu's question, she still replied hurriedly. "Then, can I distribute what belongs to me as I wish?" Lung Ruashu asked again. "Of course you can." Grape nodded. She understood the young lattice meaning. After exchanging a glance with Lotus Seed, the 2 of them excitedly picked up a spirit mist fruit each. However, neither of them was willing to eat it, and instead, they directly put it into their storage rings. "Aren't there 4 more? You guys can split it. I don't want to eat anymore." Lung Ruashua looked at the remaining fruits in front of her and said indifferently. Grape had brought a total of 7 spirit mist fruits. After she ate 1, there were still 6 left. Originally, it was just enough for the 2 of them to have 3 each. However, it only took 1 each. It seemed like the qualities of these 2 maidservants were not bad. At least they were not greedy, or rather, they did not dare to. "Thank you for the reward, miss." When Grape and Lotus Seed heard Lung Ruakshu's words, they quickly knelt down and said, "Get up. I'm not the master of the Een family, and I don't like people kneeling down for no reason. Lung Ruoxue reminded him. Yes. Grape and lotus seed stood up, and the two of them split the remaining spirit mist fruits. Following that, they stood beside Lung Ruoxue without a word, ready to receive any orders from her. Even though they had not served Lung Ruoxue for a long time, they had received special training and knew how to read people's expressions. They knew very well that this young lady was different from the masters of their Yin clan. This young lady seemed to like silence. When she was not speaking, it was best not to disturb her. If she had any matters, she would naturally instruct them. Lung Ruoxue looked at the two maidservants' performance and closed her eyes in satisfaction. Her first day at the Yin residence passed by quickly. Other than not being able to leave this courtyard, the Yin residence was still treating her courteously. However, the old man had kidnapped her. When she had the time, she would settle the score with her. Oomph. Since she was treated as a canary, wouldn't she be letting down the other party's good intentions if she couldn't be a qualified canary? The next day, after lunch, Lung Ruoxue instructed Grape and Lotus Seed to place the reclining chair that the Yin clan's head butler had sent over the night before in the garden. She then lay down comfortably and basked in the sun. Lung Ruoxue closed her eyes as she lay on the reclining chair. She used her mind to communicate with Green Vessel in her bracelet. "Sister, are you all right?" Qing Ju asked with concern. Although he really wanted to save his sister from the sea of suffering, this seemed to be the territory of a supreme divinity. He was not strong enough now, so he could only make his sister suffer. Good. All you do all day is eat and sleep. How could it not be good? Lung Ruoxue transmitted a message in a self-deprecating manner. Sister, you can actually cultivate when you have nothing to do. I feel like you're about to break through. Qing Ju reminded. Green Vessel, although the spiritual energy in the divinity is much denser than in the godly mainland, it doesn't seem to be suitable for those below the deity stage to cultivate. I'm only a mid-tier deity now. Are you trying to kill me? Lung Ruoxue pretended to be dissatisfied as she complained. It was said that the spiritual energy in the divine world contained a brutal factor. If a deity below the deity realm were to cultivate in the divine world, they would not be able to withstand the brutal force and would die. As a mid-tier deity, she naturally could not cultivate in the divine world. However, the spiritual energy she felt in the Yin family's residence was rather calm and gentle. It must be that the old man had used some kind of divine ability or formation to achieve this. This should be a kind of benefit that he gave to his descendants. Chapter 14:12. The Savage Master-Servant Pair, 2. Haha. Big sister, although the spiritual chi in the divine world is not suitable for the cultivation of deities, you are different. This spiritual chi will not have any effect on you, so you can cultivate without worry. Qing Ju smiled and said, I don't want to attract too much attention. It's better to keep a low profile. Lung Ruoxue said in disagreement. Sister, this is the Yin residence, the old man's territory. The spiritual chi here has actually been purified by him a long time ago. Although it's not as good as the spiritual chi in the Supreme God's world, it's definitely much gentler than the spiritual chi outside. If you cultivate here, you shouldn't arouse the old man's suspicion. Qing Ju said after thinking. Green Vessel, this is the divine realm after all. We have to be careful. Moreover, even though the spiritual energy here is gentler than the outside world, it's still different from the divine mainland. I'd rather be careful than take any risks. Lung Ruoxue sighed softly. The reason why the old man from the Yin family had brought her to the divinity was still unknown. Hence, she had no choice but to be on high alert and deal with it carefully. What Big Sister said makes sense. Qing Ju nodded, but he really did not want to see his sister so depressed. Sigh. His sister used to be so energetic. Now that he was trapped here, he hated the fact that his strength was too low. If he could recover his strength to its peak, it would be a piece of cake to take his sister away from here. But now, all he could do was to chat with his sister. Unfortunately, Feng De and the others, as well as most of the beasts, were in seclusion. Otherwise, he could have thought of a good way to save his sister and leave this place. Mother, he'll go out and accompany you. At this moment, Huair's tender voice rang out in Lung Ruoxu's heart. No, Huair, this is the divine realm. You will be in danger if you are discovered. Lung Ruoxu rejected him without even thinking. Woman, he'll go accompany you. If anyone dares to bully you, he'll bite him. Lil Fire also said, I wonder if your poison is effective against the people of the divine realm? Lung Ruoxu asked curiously. Ever since they left the Haotian continent, Xiao had been staying in the bracelet and rarely came out. Moreover, Xiaohua didn't need to go into seclusion. It just played with the elves every day. Now that it wanted to come out, it must be a little bored. She couldn't help but think to herself, I don't know. Why don't we take this opportunity to try it out? Lil Fire said somewhat excitedly. Godly man, it hadn't bitten him yet. I'm looking forward to it. All right, he said. Lung Ruoxu was very curious as well. Then, with a thought, she moved Xiaohua out of the bangle. After Xiaohua came out, it automatically wrapped itself around Lung Ruoxu's wrist and continued to act as her bangle. Grape and Lotus Seed, who had been standing by Lung Ruoxu's side, were startled by the sudden appearance of the little red snake. Just as they were about to make a move, they saw the little snake coiling around Lung Ruoxu's wrist in a familiar manner. It was only then that they realized that this snake must be Miss Lung's beastie. Only then did their hearts relax. Otherwise, if Miss Lung were to be bitten by a snake in front of their eyes, the family head would definitely punish them severely. They could not afford to bear such a responsibility. Xiaohua sensed the gazes of the two maidservants, and its bright eyes looked at them with slight disdain. Then it buried its small head under its body and went asleep. Ugh! The maidservant felt the little red snake's thick disdain, and her heart was really filled with mixed feelings. The two of them couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. As expected of Miss Lung's beastie, Miss Lung looked down on their Een family, and this little red snake looked down on the two of them. Sob, they felt inferior in their hearts. However, in order not to disturb Lung Ruoxu's rest, the two of them suppressed the inferiority in their hearts. Neither of them spoke, and the atmosphere slowly calmed down. After an unknown period of time, Lung Ruoxu, who was half asleep, was suddenly awoken by the noise outside the courtyard. She opened her beautiful eyes with slight displeasure and looked at Grape, who was still guarding by her side. What's going on outside? Why is it so noisy? Miss, Grape wanted to say something but stopped. He seemed to have difficulty saying it. If you have something to say, just say it. Don't hesitate. Lung Ruoxu ordered. Miss Lan is here. She wants to come in, but Lotus Seed has already gone out to block her. Grape replied. Although they had not known Miss Lung for a long time, they all knew that Lung Ruoxu did not like to be disturbed. So, as a maidservant, they naturally had to shield her from trouble. However, this Miss Lan was a little troublesome, and they were afraid that Lotus Seed could not stop her. Who is Miss Lan? Is she a young lady from the direct line of descent of your Een family? Lung Ruoxu asked, puzzled. From Grape's tone, this Miss Lan seemed to be in trouble. No, Miss Lan is the niece of the first lady of the Een family. She's the young master's younger cousin and often comes to our Een family as a guest. This Mingxi Garden is the best guest room in our Een family. Miss Lan always stays here every time she comes. However, the master has now let you stay here, so Miss Lan seems to be a little dissatisfied. Grape explained softly. Oh, Lung Ruoxu nodded her head lightly, indicating that she understood. However, she didn't mind. Not to mention that she wasn't a young lady of the Een family's direct line of descent. She wasn't even afraid of a young lady of the Een family's direct line of descent. It was best if those young ladies, or whatever, didn't come and provoke her. Otherwise, she would definitely make that old man's heart ache. The prerequisite was that the old man had to care about his juniors. You can't go in. Miss Lung is resting. At this time, Lotus Seed's voice came from outside the courtyard, followed by a bang-bang. Immediately after, dozens of people escorted a country-toppling beauty into the room. This beauty had a beautiful face and an enchanting figure. She was dressed in a fiery red dress, which made her even more beautiful and intimidating. No one dared to look at her directly. Moreover, this bow tie's strength wasn't low. She was a god-tier master. Needless to say, this beauty was Miss Lan. However, the brutal aura on her body had destroyed her original beauty, greatly reducing her beauty. As soon as Miss Lan entered the courtyard, she saw Lung Ruoxue lying on a reclining chair. Immediately, a strong wave of jealousy gushed into her heart. She had never thought that there would be such a peerless beauty hidden in Mingxi Garden. The bow tie's pure and flawless beauty made her, a woman, feel deeply threatened. So, at first sight, she could not like Lung Ruoxue, not to mention that Lung Ruoxue had occupied the courtyard she lived in. Chapter 14:13. The Savage Master and Servant 3. This is my courtyard. Move out. Miss Lan looked at Lung Ruoxue with disdain and ordered aggressively. She even raised her chin high to show her noble birth. Are you giving me an order? Lung Ruoxue lifted her beautiful eyes and asked in amusement. Wasn't this Biao young lady a little too self-righteous? What did she think this place was? AI. She was quite a beauty, but her temper was too unlikable, and her lines seemed a little familiar. That's right. Quickly move out, so you don't have to suffer. Miss Lan smiled and reminded him. You still plan to use force? Lung Ruoxue was even happier. She was just bored. Since someone took the initiative to come to her door, then she didn't need to be polite. This Miss Lan has the strength of a god-tier master. I don't know if she can take a beating, but don't disappoint her. Not only was she happy, even Xiaohua, who was still wrapped around her wrist, couldn't help but secretly wagged its tail excitedly. Lung Ruoxue quickly used her sleeve to shield Xiaohua. Oomph. If you're tactful, I don't want to be rough with a beauty like you. Miss Lan said through gritted teeth. Seeing how Miss Lan was gritting her teeth, Lung Ruoxue was not stupid enough to believe that this woman would not resort to violence against her. She just did not care. This is Miss Lung's residence. Miss Lan, please do not disturb her rest. Lotus Seed's voice traveled into everyone's ears. Following that, Lung Ruoxue saw her stumble and run in from outside in a sorry state. Her body and face were injured. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue narrowed her beautiful eyes. Was Lotus Seed beaten up? To dare to hit the Yin family's maidservant in the Yin family, this Miss Lan was really not the typical kind of overbearing. She was most interested in dealing with this kind of woman. However, the sense of accomplishment in dealing with this kind of woman was much lower than dealing with those women who looked weak on the outside, but had a strong and vicious heart. However, she was unfamiliar with the divine realm, so she couldn't just randomly pick people. So she just had to make do. Get out. You have no right to speak here. Miss Lan's maidservant scolded after seeing Lotus Seed. If she doesn't have a right to speak here, do you think you have a right to speak? Lung Ruoxue laughed. They were all maidservants, but everyone's status was similar. Could it be that one's status was higher than the other? Moreover, he didn't know if this Miss Lan was a young lady from one of the 8 great divine regions. If she wasn't, then what right did her maidservant have to shout here? After all, this was the Yin residence. You dare to talk to me like this? When the maidservant heard Lung Ruoxue's words, she roared in anger. You're just a maidservant. How dare you speak to me like this? Lung Ruoxue returned the words back to her and smiled at Miss Lan. Miss Lan's maidservant has such a good upbringing. I wonder how she was trained. You shut up. Hearing the ridicule in Lung Ruoxue's words, Miss Lan said to the maidservant beside her in anger. Yes. Her young Miss reprimand made the maidservant obediently shut her mouth. Then Miss Lan said to Lung Ruoxue arrogantly, Please move out of this place immediately. This is my place. Your place? Wasn't this the Yin family's place? How did it become your place? Lung Ruoxue's beautiful face was filled with question marks. Oomph. And my cousin's fiancé, and my cousin is the young master of the Yin family. In the future, wouldn't everything in the Yin family be mine? Miss Lan said proudly. Oh, so that's how it is. Lung Ruoxue finally understood. No wonder this young Lady Biao dared to be so overbearing in the Yin family. So it was because she was older brother Yin's fiancée. However, she didn't think that someone as transparent as older brother Yin would marry such an unruly and overbearing woman. Wasn't it too early for this woman to be pleased with herself? If her words were to be heard by the people in the Yin family, they would probably gossip about big brother Yin's young master. Since you know my identity, then quickly move out of this place. Miss Lan thought that Lung Ruoxue was afraid, so she spoke frankly. I didn't know your identity. I only know that you're the younger cousin of the Yin family's young master. However, it doesn't seem like the young master has the final say in the Yin family now. What position do you want to place the Yin family's young master in? Lung Ruoxue asked with a cold smile. You don't slander me. If I tell uncle, he won't let you off. Lung Ruoxue's words made Miss Lan feel a little embarrassed and angry. She knew that what she said earlier was a little inappropriate. Furthermore, she had only said those words to scare the woman in front of her. However, who knew that not only was she not afraid, she had even used them to threaten her. This made her feel at a loss, because if these words were to spread, it would definitely cause trouble for her cousin. Thus, she was both angry and afraid. Did I say anything? Lung Ruoxue found it a little funny. She had thought that this woman would continue to treat her with a tough attitude. Now it seemed that she was also afraid. You should move out of here immediately. I want to live here. Miss Lan did not want to continue the previous topic with Lung Ruoxue, so she repeated. All right, Grape, go and ask the master. Just tell him that there's a Lady Lan who wants me to move out of here. Ask him if he's okay with it. Lung Ruoxue smiled as she spoke to Grape, who was so angry that his face had turned green. Yes, Miss will go and ask now. Upon hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Grape hurriedly said. However, just as she was about to leave Lung Ruoxue's side to meet the family head, she was stopped by Miss Lan. Where are you going? No one is allowed to leave this place without my order. Miss Lan said in an overbearing manner. The maidservants and subordinates behind her had surrounded Lung Ruoxue and the other two. Each of them had a fiendish expression on their faces. Miss Lan, please step aside. I'm going to see the patriarch. Grape said coldly. She was also very angry about Lotus Seed's beating. If it had been by a young lady from the direct line of the family, she would not have said anything. However, this Miss Lan was clearly an outsider, yet she was flaunting her power in the Yin family. How could she swallow this insult? However, if it was not for Lung Ruoxue's support, she would not have dared to be so unyielding in front of Miss Lan. You're just a little servant girl. Do you think Grandpa Master will see you? Miss Lan's face was full of ridicule. Even she didn't have the chance to see the head of the Yin family, so she didn't think that this servant girl would be able to see him. It should be known that the head of the Yin family was not an ordinary family. Even her uncle, the head of the Yin family's head, probably didn't have many chances to see the head of the family, let alone a servant girl. Whether or not we meet her is our Yin family's business. Miss Lan is not a member of the Yin family, so we don't need you to worry about it. Grape said in an unpleasant tone. How audacious! You dare to talk to me like this. You really have no manners. Is this the maidservant you taught? Miss Lan pointed at the grapes and questioned Lung Ruoxue. She has nothing to do with me. She's the Yin family's maidservant. She was trained by the Yin family. I'm the same as you, just a guest of the Yin family. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. She should be considered a guest, right? She would not treat herself as a prisoner of the Yin family. If that's the case, then all the more reason for you to move. This is my residence. When Miss Lan heard Lung Ruoxue's words, she was overjoyed. Since this woman was not a member of the Yin family, she had no right to fight with her. I'm sorry. Master Yin arranged for me to stay here. If you want me to move out, you have to get his permission first. Without his permission, I can't leave this courtyard at will. Lung Ruoxue said honestly. How is this possible? Do you think I'm that easy to fool? Don't think that I'll be afraid of you, just because you're using the family head to pressure me. Men, chase the three of them out of this place. Miss Lan ordered. When her maidservants and subordinates heard their young lattice orders, they naturally did their best to carry them out. However, As maidservants assigned to Lung Ruoxue by the head butler, it was impossible for Grape and Lotus Seed to watch Lung Ruoxue being driven out of Mingxi Garden. The two of them exchanged a look, and Lotus Seed quietly left the encirclement of Miss Land's subordinates. She wanted to go and report, but she had only taken 2 steps when her actions were discovered by Miss Land's maidservants. "Catch her! Don't let her find the messenger!" The maidservant quickly shouted. Miss Land's 2 subordinates heard the maidservant's words and realized Lotus Seed's intention. They quickly took big steps and grabbed Lotus Seed back like they were holding chicken. "Release me. This is the Een residence, and you can't be so presumptuous. The head of the family will not let you off." Lotus Seed's hands were bound by Miss Land's subordinates, so she could only use her feet to kick the 2 people who were holding her. However, her fancy fists and fancy kicks obviously had no effect on her tall and strong subordinates. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue slowly stood up from the reclining chair. Looking at Lotus Seed, whose hair was in a mess and who was in a sorry state, she said coldly, "Release her." These people were really too bold. They dared to make a move on the Een family's maidservants in the Een family. They were really lawless. She didn't know how that old man allowed them to be so savage. If it was her, he would definitely chase them all out and forbid them from coming to his house in the future. After all, in her opinion, as a guest, she had to act like a guest. She would never allow such a thing as a guest bullying the host to happen in front of her. Moreover, these people had bullied her. If she did not react at all, it would only make them think that she was afraid. This was not her character. "Miss, don't worry about me. They won't dare to do anything to me." When Lotus Seed heard Lung Ruoxue's words, she was touched and hurriedly replied. She did not wish for Lung Ruoxue to get into a conflict with Lady Lan and the others because of her. After all, the latter's strength was too low. Although she was brought back by the family head, distant water could not quench present thirst. The family head was not here now, so naturally he could not help them. "Pa!" As soon as Lotus Seed finished speaking, she was slapped on her beautiful face. Half of her face instantly swelled up. The person who slapped her was the maidservant beside Miss Lan. Miss Lan's maidservant looked at Lotus Seed with disdain and said, "Who allowed you to speak? Shut your mouth. This is the Een residence." Lotus Seed reminded him with a cold smile. Chapter 1414. The Young Lady of the Een Family. 1. What's wrong with the Een clan? The Een family will be decided by my family's young miss sooner or later, so you'd better be tactful and not disobey my family's young miss words. Miss Land's maidservant said, a little like a fox exploiting a tiger's might. "What big words! Do you think the master of the Een family is dead? I'm afraid your young lady is dead, but the old ancestor of the Een family is still alive." Lung Ruoxue teased, feeling a little amused. She didn't know what to say about this master and servant pair's self-confidence and arrogance. To be honest, it wasn't that there weren't people like them who were as self-righteous as them. However, it was quite rare to see such a top-grade one. They hadn't even married yet. He treated this place as his own home. He really didn't know what the Een family would think if they knew. She was really looking forward to the Een family's reaction. "You dare curse my family's young miss to die. You're so bold." When a maidservant heard Lung Ruoxue say that her young miss was dead, she was immediately enraged. She did not hear anything else and immediately started shouting. "I'm talking about you treating the Een family's master as a dead man. Don't you understand human language? My words aren't hard to understand, right?" Lung Ruoxue was extremely puzzled. Her beautiful face was still filled with question marks. "How dare you?" the maidservant said through gritted teeth, her face completely red. "AI, it turns out that you really don't understand human language. I'm sorry, I can't tell what type of beastie you are." Lung Ruoxue let out a soft sigh before asking curiously, "Ha ha ha, young miss, how could she be a beastie? Is there a beastie as stupid as her?" Upon hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Grape could not help but laugh. In her heart, she admired Lung Ruoxue even more. The young miss was really too powerful. With just a few words, she made this master and servant so angry that they were about to explode. However, they were alone, and if the other party became angry from embarrassment later, she must protect young Miss Lung well, she decided in her heart. You're right. Then what is she? Why can't I tell? Lung Ruoshua muttered to herself, as if she was deep in thought. Miss, she's worse than a beast. The grapes agreed. Yes, Grape, you're smart. Lung Ruoshua nodded in appreciation. It seemed like this Grape could be taught well. During her time in the Een family, she would properly cultivate the grapes. Hee, Miss is too kind. Grape was very humble. Listening to the conversation between Lung Ruoshua and Grape, Lady Lan and the rest were so angry that they almost vomited blood. Her maidservant even looked at her lady with an aggrieved expression and said with tears in her eyes, Miss, they humiliated me like this. You have to stand up for me. Don't worry, I will definitely seek justice for you. I'll tell my uncle-in-law to kick this servant girl out of the Een family. The Een family won't want a servant girl who doesn't know the rules and disrespects guests. Miss Lan said very seriously. Many thanks, miss. The maidservant beside Miss Lan said gratefully. Lung Ruoshua almost laughed out loud when she saw the master and servant's self-directed act. However, she still asked with a puzzled look, You said that grapes don't know the rules and don't respect the guests? May I ask, how many rules do you know as a guest? Do you know how to respect the host? This master and servant pair were really of the highest quality. They had completely different requirements for themselves and for others. They could do whatever they wanted, but if others did not suit their wishes, it would be considered as not knowing the rules and not respecting the guests. It was really too funny. I really don't know where they came from. Did they have a special school for brain damage? Otherwise, why would she always encounter such a high-quality person? Lung Ruoshua couldn't understand why she was so fated with supreme grade. She didn't even need to look for him. This kind of person would take the initiative to come to her door, sigh. I'm really helpless. I'm the future head lady of the Een family. Miss Lan heard Lung Ruoshua's words and reminded. All right, you are the future head lady of the Een family. Lung Ruoshua was convinced. She couldn't be bothered to argue with her, so she simply shut her mouth. However, when she stopped talking, Miss Lan thought that she was afraid. She heard Miss Lan's slightly proud voice again. Since you already know, hurry up and give me this place. Not to mention that you're not the lady of the Een family yet. Even if you are, I will not give this place to you unless you order your subordinates to chase me out. Lung Ruoshua was helpless. It seemed like she had no choice but to ignore this woman. She felt conflicted. You think I don't dare to? Men, throw the three of them out. After hearing Lung Ruoshua's words, Miss Lan said angrily. She had thought that the other party would be afraid after knowing her identity. However, who knew that the other party was not afraid at all? This made her even more furious. One had not to mention her own family. She had always been able to get whatever she wanted. Even in the Een family, she was used to everything going smoothly. No one had ever dared to treat her like this. Even a young miss of the Een family's direct line of descent had treated her with respect. Who knew that this woman who came out of nowhere would actually dare to not put her in her eyes? This was really preposterous. Yes, miss. When the fiendish-looking subordinates heard their young miss orders, they immediately went forward to grab Lung Ruoshua and Grape. However, before they could get close to Lung Ruoshua, they were attacked by a red lightning bolt that was flying towards them. Arg, what is this? It hurts. Plop. As the screams rang out, dozens of subordinates were attacked. Some even fell to the ground, unconscious. No one saw clearly what the red lightning that attacked them was because it was too fast. However, when the red lightning returned to Lung Ruoshua's wrist, they could clearly see that the red lightning that had attacked them was a small red snake that was only as thick as a finger. The little snake was extremely tiny, and its crystal-clear body was as beautiful and mesmerizing as a transparent crystal. At this time, the little snake's head was raised high in pride, and its pair of bright eyes were looking at them disdainfully. Most of these subordinates were god-tier masters, and some of them were also gods. Therefore, Xiao didn't feel any pressure when it bit them. However, After those people were bitten by Xiaowa, their bodies showed different signs. Some of them directly fainted, some of them felt numb and lost consciousness in half of their bodies, and some of them were foaming at the mouth. However, at this time, the subordinates who were still conscious all looked at Xiaohua in horror, because they knew very well that they were poisoned. Chapter 14:15. The Young Lady of Yin Family. 2. This little snake had actually caused them to be poisoned in an instant. Other than its speed being so fast that they were unable to react in time, its strength should not be below theirs. Therefore, they were quite afraid of Xiaohua and did not dare to provoke that little fellow. In fact, after being bitten, other than those who had directly fainted, the others did not have the ability to haggle, even if they wanted to. And now, the only people who were intact among them were their young miss and the maidservant beside her. When Miss Lan saw the little red snake, she was also dumbfounded for a moment. However, after she regained her senses, she began to covet Lil Fire. This little snake was not only beautiful, but also had extraordinary strength. It was a perfect match for her. She even fantasized about how beautiful the little red snake would be if it were to coil around her wrist. Thinking of this, she wanted to get Lil Fire even more. "Give me that little snake," Miss Lan ordered coldly. "Can you give me a reason?" Lung Ruoxua laughed, her slender fingers caressing Xiaohu's soft body. Xiaohua was so comfortable that it half closed its eyes, not even looking at Miss Lan. "It bit my subordinate," Miss Lan reminded. In her opinion, this reason was the best. However, she did not expect that even if Xiaohua had bitten her subordinate, the other party had no reason to hand Xiaohua over to her. So what? Lung Ruoxua didn't think much of it. Even if she killed all of her subordinates, she wouldn't hand Little Fire over to this woman who clearly had ulterior motives towards Little Fire. "It bit my subordinate, so it should pay for it with its life," Miss Lan said after some thought. "Your words are really funny. They only bit your subordinate and want my Little Fire to pay with its life. If they were bitten to death, do you want me to pay with my life?" Lung Ruoxua asked with a smile. "Isn't this what I should do? Your cheap lives are not worth much. If this snake bites my subordinates to death, don't even think about running away. All of you will have to pay with your lives." Miss Lan said, "Oh really? I would like to know how much Lady Lan and your subordinates are worth." Lung Ruoxua was speechless when she heard Miss Lan's words. "We're all priceless," Miss Lan said arrogantly. Although she wasn't born in the 8 great divine regions, she could become the future mistress of the Yin family, one of the 8 great divine regions. This could be said to be the proudest thing in her life. Xiaohua couldn't help but laugh at Miss Lan's words. This woman was really not the typical self-righteous person. As a beastie, although it didn't understand human nature very well, it couldn't stand this woman anymore. It could only imagine how outrageous this woman was. "Damn it, what are you laughing at?" Looking at Xiaohu's convulsing laughter, Miss Lan roared in anger. "Can't your grandfather even smile?" Fiery couldn't help but ask. "Of course my grandfather can laugh," Miss Lan quickly said. "Yes, my good granddaughter." Lil Fire laughed evilly. "Who are you calling?" Miss Lan felt that something was wrong. "Of course I'm calling you, idiot." Xiaohu's face was full of contempt, and it even turned its little head very disdainfully. "You're looking for death." Miss Lan flew into a rage out of humiliation. She rushed forward to grab Xiaohua, but Xiaohua was not someone she could touch. Before she could get close, it darted out like lightning and bit Miss Lan's beautiful face. Then it flicked its tail and bit the maidservant. After it was done, Xiaohua spat and said with a look of disgust, "So stinky. You two are so stinky, even stinky than those men." After being bitten, Miss Lan and her maidservant rolled their eyes and fell to the ground with a plop before they could say anything. Seeing that their miss had also been bitten, the subordinate of Miss Lan, who still had a trace of consciousness, looked at the arrogant Little Fire in horror, his heart trembling. "Don't be afraid. I won't bite you guys anymore." When Fiery saw their appearance, he hurriedly consoled them out of goodwill. "Yes, Xiaohua is very picky with his food. He only likes to take a bite of food. Don't worry." Lung Ruoxua consoled him as well. She then smiled and said, Do you plan to stay here forever, or do you want me to order people to throw you out? Well, leave now. The subordinates were so frightened by Lung Ruoxu's gentle gaze that they started to stutter. They scrambled to their feet and were about to run out of the courtyard when Lung Ruoxu called out to them. Wait, Lung Ruoxu said. Is there anything else, miss? A subordinate couldn't help but ask. Wasn't it this young lady who asked them to leave? Did she go back on her word? The subordinate was bewildered, but the fear in his heart grew deeper and deeper. Take the trash on the ground with you. Lung Ruoxu pointed at the unconscious people, including Miss Lan. Yes, the subordinates were extremely vexed. They were all poisoned, and it was already good enough that they could leave on their own. They even had to bring these people along. Even though they were not very willing, they did not dare to disobey Lung Ruoxu's orders. They dragged the people on the ground up like they were dragging gunny sacks. They had come in high spirits, but left Bright Stream Garden in a sorry state. What they didn't know was that this was the result of Lung Ruoxu showing mercy. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't want to reveal her strength, it was hard to say if these people would be able to leave this place alive. After Miss Lan's subordinates left dejectedly, Lung Ruoxu lay back lazily on the lounge chair. Meanwhile, Grape and Lotus Seed looked at Xiaohua with adoration. Their hearts were filled with excitement. This was what it meant to fight without bloodshed. They didn't even need to do anything, and this little snake had settled everything. Idle, feeling the fiery gazes of Grape and Lotus Seed, Lil Fire was a little embarrassed. It said shyly, "Don't worship me. I'm just a legend." Upon hearing this, Lung Ruoxu's forehead was filled with black lines. She thought to herself, could it be that Xiaohua has been hanging out with Bing Yao for a long time and has also learned how to be arrogant? As far as she knew, this was Bing Yao's favorite phrase. When Grape and Lotus Seed heard Xiaohua's words, they laughed happily. The two of them even deliberately echoed, "My lord, this servant worships you to death." Chapter 14:16. The Young Lady of the Yin Family. 3. I told you not to worship me. Lil Fire said a little sunderily before burying his head under his own little body. Seeing this, Grape and Lotus Seed laughed even more happily. After laughing enough, the two of them started to worry. After all, they knew very well that Miss Lan was not to be trifled with. They also knew how the eldest branch would react after such a thing happened. The two of them exchanged glances. Grape looked at Lung Ruoxu, who had closed her eyes and turned to leave Bright Stream Garden. When she arrived at the main courtyard, Grape did not see the family head. The guard sent her away after saying that the family head was in seclusion. This situation made her heart feel heavier and heavier. Depressed, he returned to Mingxi Garden. Seeing that Lung Ruoxu was still sleeping, he shook his head at Lotus Seed. Grape then stood at the side without saying a word. After a while, Lung Ruoxu opened her beautiful eyes and looked at Grape and Lotus Seed, who had a worried look on their faces. She smiled and said, "What's wrong? I didn't see that old man." Her words were very certain, but Grape and Lotus Seed, who were worried, did not hear it. The guard said that the clan head is in seclusion. Grape told her the truth, and then consoled Lung Ruoxu. "Young miss need not worry. You are the guest of the family head. I don't think the first branch would dare to do anything to you. They can't do anything to me, but they will take it out on you too, right?" Lung Ruoxu understood. Actually, she was very clear that the Yin clan might not dare to do anything to her because she was brought back by the clan head. However, these two maidservants would definitely bear the wrath of someone on her behalf. Furthermore, she did not believe that the old man would go into seclusion. If she was not wrong, the old man should be hiding to watch the show. Since that was the case, she couldn't be blamed. If she didn't turn the Yin family upside down, her last name wasn't Lung. Just as Lung Ruoxu had expected, the master of the Yin family was not in seclusion. At this moment, he was in the study room with a kind-looking old man, admiring every movement in Mingxi Garden through the light screen. "Hee, I've already said that this little girl is very bold and wouldn't be afraid at all. I've guessed it." The master of the Yin family said proudly, "You're beautiful. This little girl isn't afraid because she hasn't seen the direct descendant of the Yin clan. If she sees your substitute clan head, how can she not be afraid? The old man said with a face of disbelief. In his heart, Lung Ruashua didn't care about Shaolan and the others mainly because they weren't from the Yin family. However, when this little girl directly confronted the direct lineage of the Yin family, he didn't believe that Lung Ruashua would still be so calm and composed. The old man who spoke was the great elder of the Yin family. In the Yin family, he had the highest authority other than the master. However, he was often in seclusion, so the members of the Yin family rarely saw him. In fact, many of the members did not even know him. The substitute clan head he was referring to was the head of the first branch of the Yin clan, which was Yin Shao's father. There were many people in the 8 great divine regions, and their status in the divine world was quite high. The patriarchs of the 8 great divine regions were the ancestors of their respective families, and these ancestors would naturally not lower their status to deal with other families. Thus, the 8 great divine regions also had the position of acting patriarch. The acting family head had great power, except for some important matters that needed the final decision of the group of elders and the family head. The daily affairs of the family were generally handled by the acting family head. Therefore, without the intervention of the family head and the group of elders, the acting family head could be regarded as the head of the family. You're underestimating that girl. She's not even afraid of me. So why would she be afraid of our Yin clan's acting clan head? Don't forget, he even calls me old man. Furthermore, instead of worrying about that little girl, you should worry about our Yin family. Master Yin reminded. He thought highly of Lung Ruashua, but he wanted to know her true abilities and trump cards. Otherwise, she wouldn't have pushed him away for closed-door cultivation. The reason why he avoided meeting her was because he hoped that Lung Ruashua could handle this matter herself. You're that confident in that little girl? The Yin family's first elder was surprised. He was about the same age as the family head and had known him since they were young. However, other than those few old farts, he had never seen the family head so confident in any of his juniors. Seeing him like this, he even wanted to go and meet that little girl personally. Of course, just wait for a good show. The master of the Yin family gloated. Seeing the excitement on his master's face, the Yin family's first elder broke out in a cold sweat for his family's junior. With such an ungrateful family head, the Yin family's juniors were in for a bad time. At this moment, Lung Ruashua, who was in Mingxi Garden, was ordering grape and lotus seed to prepare dinner. However, the two of them were clearly distracted. Seeing them like this, Lung Ruashua sighed and said, "Can you two be happy? This was just a small matter. Is there a need for all of you to be so frowning? Miss Lan is the niece of the first branch's madam. Now that something like this has happened, the first branch will definitely stand up for her. Furthermore, you may not know this, but the first master of the first branch is the acting family head of the Yin family. Now that the family head is in seclusion, the entire Yin family is dominated by him alone." Grape explained. Actually, what she didn't say was that if the master was not in closed-door cultivation, it would be fine. With the master's support, even if the eldest master was the acting master, he couldn't do anything to Lung Ruashua. However, the key problem was that the master was in closed-door cultivation, and no one knew when he would come out. If there was no one to support Lung Ruashua, wouldn't Lung Ruashua be at the mercy of others? This was what she was most worried about. Grape, don't you think you're worrying too much? If your acting family head wanted to support his wife's niece, he would have long sent someone to settle the score with us. How could we still be so free and unfettered? Lung Ruashua said with a light smile, not minding it at all. Miss, this matter is very serious. Seeing how calm Lung Ruashua was, Grape reminded her anxiously. Calm down, hurry up, and prepare dinner. I'm hungry. Lung Ruashua urged. Yes, Grape and Lotus Seed responded, then turned around and left worriedly. Seeing the two maidservants leave, Lung Ruashua sighed and lay back on the deck chair. Suddenly, a clear voice rang in her ears. Were you the one who let your snake bite Shaolan? Lung Ruashua lifted her beautiful eyes and saw that the one who spoke was a girl around 15 or 16 years old. Although the girl wasn't very pretty, she was extremely cute. Her round, apple-like face was flushed red, and her large eyes with distinct black and white were fluttering her long eyelashes. She was staring at Lung Ruoxue without blinking, and her face was filled with curiosity. This little girl's strength wasn't very high either, only at the initial level of the deity stage. I didn't see. It was little Fire who didn't like her, so he bit her. Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she tried to guess the girl's identity. She was dressed very fastidiously. Even though she was only a low-level deity, she was able to live in the deity world. This was enough to prove that this girl was a direct descendant of the Yin clan. Furthermore, she should be a direct descendant with very high talent. It's Lil Fire? She's so pretty and cute. The little girl looked at the little red snake wrapped around Lung Ruoxue's wrist. Her clear eyes were filled with countless stars as she spoke with envy. Little kid, you can't judge things by their appearance. Hearing Jingbei's words, Lung Ruoxue's forehead broke out in a cold sweat. She thought to herself, Xiaohua may look pretty and cute on the outside, but his temper isn't easy to get along with. Sister, I'm not a little kid, I'm already 16 years old. The girl protested. Is 16 very old? Lung Ruoxue was in a good mood as she teased. I'm already an adult. In order to prove her words, Jingbei even puffed out her chest to show that she was not lying. All right, you're an adult now. Lung Ruoxue glanced at the little girl's well-developed chest and said helplessly, Yes, sister, I really admire you. Jingbei said to Lung Ruoxue with stars in her eyes. What do you admire me for? Lung Ruoxue couldn't understand. This was her first time meeting this little girl. So what did she have to admire her for? You dare to let your snake bite Xiaolan, hee. I'm so happy. The little girl's face was filled with excitement. Lung Ruoxue could also tell that this little girl's happiness was definitely from the bottom of her heart. Do you have a grudge against that Lady Lan? Lung Ruoxue's face was filled with black lines as she asked. No grudges. I just don't like her. That woman is always putting on an act and using her power to intimidate others. I really hate her. The girl said with a look of disdain. Are you a member of the Yin family? Lung Ruoxue asked with uncertainty after hearing the little girl's words. Hee. Big sister, of course I'm from the Yin family. Furthermore, Xiaolan is my cousin. However, I don't like her. I'm so happy to see her get bitten by a snake today, and her face is swollen like a pig's head. Sister, please don't give her the antidote. Just let her be like this for the rest of her life, so that she won't have any ideas about my brother. The little girl reminded him with an evil smile. Since you're a member of the Yin family, and you don't like her, why would you allow her to flaunt her power in the Yin family? Lung Ruoxue couldn't understand. This girl's identity and status should be higher than Miss Lan's, but from her tone, it seemed like she couldn't do anything to Miss Lan. That woman is too good at acting. She's very obedient in front of my father, but she's very arrogant in front of others. I can't find anything against her, and with her father's support, no one will believe me. They will only think that I'm jealous of my cousin's beauty. Who would want to be jealous of her? The little girl's cute face was filled with disdain. Sister, you're even better looking than Xiaolan. I really like you. Jingbei said seriously. She looked at Lung Ruoxue with a perverted look in her eyes and was almost drooling. You're also very cute, and I like you very much. Lung Ruoxue replied politely. Little miss, what are you doing here? Suddenly, Grape's voice rang out from behind the two. Miss, she is the little miss of the Yin family, Yin Xian. Grape then introduced to Lung Ruoxue. Older sister, I'm the youngest young lady in the Yin family, so they all call me Little Young Lady. Yin Xian explained. Her pink apple-like face still had a bit of blush. Big sister, you could just call me Xian. Yin Xian added. Yes. Lung Ruoxue nodded and continued. Xian, did you come here just out of curiosity? Actually, other than wanting to see Big Sister, I'm also here to deliver a message. Yin Xian's cute little face had a slightly smug look as she said. Chapter 14:17. The cutest Xian one. Tip him off? So you're a little spy. Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she teased. Hee hee. Sister, you don't know how scary that woman looks right now. She's wailing like a ghost and howling like a wolf. But father and mother don't have the time to settle scores with you right now. They've already found many pill refiners to come to the house to cure Shaolan, but those pill refiners seem to be helpless. In Xian said with a gloating smile. Oh. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head and did not express any opinion. She waited for In Xian to continue. Sister, if the alchemist my father found can't cure Shaolan's poison, he'll definitely come and find you. He'll even threaten and bribe you. But don't be afraid, my father is just bluffing. He won't do anything to you. After a pause, In Xian continued. You're the one who thinks he won't do anything to me, right? I'm not a member of the Yin clan. If he really wants to force me to hand over the antidote, I'm afraid it won't be as simple as just scaring him. Lung Ruoxue was speechless. In Xian's words made several black lines appear on her forehead. She never thought that someone would say that her father was bluffing. It was likely that her father would only bluff to scare In Xian when she made a mistake. However, others might not have such treatment. Sister, you have to believe me. Father is really a paper tiger. He won't do anything to you. In Xian promised. Because you're his daughter, he's just a paper tiger in front of you. But he's never like this in front of others. Lung Ruoxue reminded him of their relationship. Is this the case? After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, In Xian's cute face revealed a confused expression. Of course, because he's your father. Although he scolds you sometimes, he can't bear to do anything to you. However, he doesn't have such concerns when it comes to outsiders. Lung Ruoxue understood. As the saying goes, parents all over the world have a pitiful heart. All parents wish for their children to be well-behaved and sensible. Other than this, cultivators also wish for their children to have outstanding qualifications. Only then would they have face and their family clan would go further. But why do I feel like he's like this to other people? In Xian muttered to herself. The others you're talking about are your own clansmen or in-laws, right? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. It seems so. In Xian thought for a moment and said with some embarrassment, but she couldn't help but think to herself, is her father really not a paper tiger? She was still skeptical about this. That's why I said that your father would never bluff in front of outsiders. Lung Ruoxue said with certainty. In Xian's father was the acting family head of one of the 8 great divine regions. If he was really a paper tiger that only knew how to scare people, why would that old man from the Yin family let him be the acting family head? A clan like this would never risk their clan's future. Sister, no matter how my father treats you, don't be afraid. My mother and I will definitely help you. In Xian saw that her previous words were no longer convincing, so she had to bring up her mother again. Your mother? Isn't she Miss Lan's aunt? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. Yup. In fact, my mother doesn't like her very much either and only maintains a superficial relationship. However, as long as I go and talk to my mother, she will definitely stand on your side. In Xian said with certainty. Hearing In Xian's words, Lung Ruoxue didn't know what to say. This family was really strange. The aunt and cousin didn't like their own niece and cousin, but the uncle seemed to love his niece a lot. What was going on? She was a little confused. Not only was Lung Ruoxue confused, even Grape, who was the maid of the Yin family, was confused by In Xian's words. She had never thought that the lady in charge of the first branch would not like Lady Lan. This was too unbelievable. However, she would not ask her own questions. After all, in a family like the Yin family, the most important thing to survive was to speak less and do more. Especially as a subordinate, it was even more forbidden to casually ask about the gossip of their master. This was a taboo in any family. Sister, please believe me. This time, I'm very certain. In Xian saw that Lung Ruoxue didn't say anything and thought that she didn't believe her, so she promised her anxiously. It's not that I don't believe you. Lung Ruoxue could not help but laugh. Hee hee, that's good. In Xian said happily. Sister, what's that smell? It smells so good. Suddenly, a faint fragrance drifted over with the wind. In Xian sniffed, took a deep breath, and asked curiously, "It should be the fragrance of the dishes." Lung Rawashua said with a faint smile. Lotus Seed's dishes were not bad. However, as the young lady of the Een family, she should have eaten all kinds of dishes, right? How could he be so sensitive to this smell? "Sister, can you treat me to a meal?" When Een Xian heard that it was the smell of food, she couldn't help but ask. After she finished speaking, her face blushed with embarrassment. "All right," Lung Rawashua nodded and immediately instructed Grape to get Lotus Seed to prepare a few more dishes. When it was time to eat, Lung Rawashua only tried every dish, but Een Xian was very happy. Her small mouth was filled with food, and she didn't even have time to talk. When Lung Rawashua saw Een Xian's current state, she couldn't help but sigh in her heart. How long had it been since this little miss of the Een family had eaten? Why was she so hungry? After finishing her meal, Een Xian saw Lung Rawashua's confused expression and scratched her head in embarrassment. Hee. "Big sister, this dish is really too delicious. Since you like it so much, Lotus Seed will be very happy," Lung Rawashua said with a smile. "Yes, Lotus Seed. Why didn't I know that your cooking skills were so good?" Een Xian said with a face full of regret. "I didn't have a chance to cook before," Lotus Seed explained shyly. Ever since she and Grape had started serving Lung Rawashua yesterday, Miss Lung had been dissatisfied with the dishes the head butler had prepared for her. Hence, they had no choice but to personally cook according to Lung Rawashua's request. "That's true. Sister, can I come here often for free meals in the future?" After hearing Lotus Seed's words, Een Xian said to Lung Rawashua. Chapter 14:18. The cue to Xian if you like it, feel free to come and eat. Lung Rawashua said generously. It wasn't her style to eat anyway, so she didn't mind having another gluttonous little pig like him. Hee. "Sister, I want stand on ceremony then. It's getting late, so we'll go back first. He'll come and accompany you tomorrow." Een Xian stood up and left in a hurry. Watching Een Xian's back as she left, Lung Rawashua asked thoughtfully, "Is Xian doted on in the Een clan?" "Young Miss, Little Miss, is the Een family's most pampered young miss from the direct line. On top of that, she has a biological older brother who is the young master, so Little Miss' status in the Een family is very high." Grape replied. "Oh." Lung Rawashua nodded her head slightly. She then turned to Grape and Lianzi. "After you're done, you can all go rest. I don't need you to serve me anymore." "Yes, miss." The two of them saluted, cleaned the table, and left the room. The next morning, Een Xian came to eat. After breakfast, she came and went without a trace. When it was time for lunch at noon and at night, she would come back on time. After lunch, she would chat with Lung Rawashua for a while before leaving. Seeing that Een Xian had come to report on time, Lung Rawashua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Did this little girl think that this was a restaurant? Moreover, it was said that he had brought her some useful information, but she didn't think it was of much use after listening to it. What's more, Een Xian didn't know when her father, the acting family head, would come to find her. It was said that he was busy looking for an alchemist to refine pills for Miss Lan. Zaya's poison was not something that an ordinary alchemist could cure. Moreover, it required Zaya's saliva. Strange, why didn't that substitute clan head send someone to get Zaya's saliva? Even though Lung Rawashua was a little bewildered, she didn't think too much about it. However, regardless of whether the substitute family head would come or not, she was already prepared. At the same time, in another guest courtyard of the Een residence, although it was already late at night, it was still busy. Many maidservants and guards were guarding the door of the room, and from time to time, painful moans could be heard from the room. This room was Miss Lan's room. At this time, the acting patriarch of the Een family, her aunt, Een Xian and Xiaolan's parents were all by her bed. Among them, Xiaolan's parents were the most anxious, while Een Xian looked indifferent. As for Een Xian mother, the acting patriarch's wife, her expression was normal, making it impossible to guess what she was thinking. Even the acting patriarch of the Een family, Een Ping, had a trace of worry on his face. Mother, I'm so uncomfortable. I don't want to live anymore." Lying on the bed, Xiaolan's hands and feet were bound by a white cloth. She was trying her best to break free from the restraints, and in an instant, deep red marks appeared on her wrists and ankles. Lana, my good Lan, just bear with it. We've already gone to find the medicine. Madame Xiao's heart ached when she saw her precious daughter in such pain. Her hatred for Lung Ruoxue, who had caused her daughter to suffer, grew even more. After comforting her daughter, she turned to Yin Ping angrily and said, "Brother-in-law, where's the person who harmed my daughter? Give her to me. I want to deal with her myself. I said that I would give you an explanation for this matter. As for that person, don't even think about it." Yin Ping said coldly. To be honest, he didn't like the way his sister-in-law questioned him. However, seeing that Xiaolan was suffering, he wouldn't argue with them. However, it was impossible for him to hand Lung Ruoxue over to them, who asked his father, the head of the household, to bring Lung Ruoxue back. Hence, even though he promised them that he would give them an explanation, he would never dare to have any ideas about Lung Ruoxue. Why? Could that person be related to brother-in-law? Madame Xiao asked angrily. What do you mean by that? Yin Ping asked somewhat angrily. These words couldn't be said carelessly, otherwise, if word got out, how would he manage his clansmen? I don't mean anything. Brother-in-law knows it clearly. Madame Xiao said coldly. She had heard from the guards at home that the person who had injured her precious daughter was a woman, and a very beautiful woman at that. Now that that woman was being protected by her brother-in-law and refused to hand her over to them, wasn't it obvious what kind of relationship they had? What does he know? At this time, Xiaolin, who was standing next to Yin Ping, asked with a slightly displeased tone, "Sister, you have to be careful. Be careful that brother-in-law will make a small one for you." Mrs. Xiao said with a gloating expression. She had already made it very clear, so she didn't believe that her sister wouldn't understand. "You shut up. Is this something you can say?" Xiaolin growled angrily. She never liked her sister-in-law and would never try to get close to her. However, she never thought that her sister-in-law would say something like that. It touched her bottom line. Seeing Xiaolin's anger, Mrs. Xiao stammered. She was about to say something, but her husband pulled her arm, so she had to shut her mouth. "Sister, she's talking nonsense because she's too worried about Lanair's health. Please don't mind her. We all know that brother-in-law isn't that kind of person." Xiaolan's father, Xiaohua, said apologetically. It might have been better if he didn't say it, but after he said it, Xiaolin became even angrier. "You don't mind? Could it be that just because his daughter was injured, he could spout nonsense and slander others?" That man was her brother-in-law. Did they ever think about their sister's feelings when they said that? It was all her husband's fault for loving the house too much. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoiled her own family. Her heart felt heavy when she thought about this. In fact, she really didn't need her husband to take care of these insensible family members for her. However, every time she said this, Brother Ping would think that she didn't want to put him in a difficult position and would do her best instead. Later on, she didn't say these words as long as these people didn't go too far and cross her bottom line. She could only turn a blind eye to it. But now, they had clearly crossed her bottom line, and this was something she absolutely could not tolerate. Seeing that Xiaolin's expression was very ugly, Xiaohua quickly helped her out of Xiaolan's room. He coaxed her as they walked, but no matter how much he tried to coax her, he could not make Xiaolin smile. Seeing that his sister was really angry, Xiaohua was a little flustered. It must be known that he could call the wind and rain in the Xiao family all because of his sister. Chapter 1419. The Most Adorable Xian 3. Although Xiaolin was not his biological sister, she was raised by his parents since she was young. The relationship between the two had always been very good. After Xiaolin married into the Yin family, Yin Ping, his brother-in-law, took good care of them. So, over time, they became used to it, especially his wife and daughter. They simply regarded the Yin family as their own home. Because he also hoped from the bottom of his heart that his wife and daughter could be closer to this sister, he was naturally happy to see it happen. He also knew that his wife sometimes said things that were unpleasant to the ears. However, his sister had never minded it. However, this time, she was really angry. This made him feel a little uneasy. Sister, you also know that Ru Ping can't speak. Don't take it to heart. Before sending Xiao Lin to her room, Xiao Hua still felt a little worried. Go back and look after Lan, or you don't need to worry about me. Xiao Lin sighed. She still loved her brother, but she couldn't like her sister-in-law and niece. Sister, have a good rest. I'll go look after Lan. After Xiao Hua finished speaking, he turned and left. As soon as Xiao Hua left, Yin Xian jumped out of nowhere. Mother, are you all right? Yin Xian said worriedly. Just now in Xiao Lan's room, she had the impulse to beat someone up, but in the end, she restrained herself. After all, she didn't want to put her mother in a difficult position. I'm fine. Xian, why did you leave as well? Xiao Lin asked curiously. Didn't Xian, say she wanted to gather information? He had actually left Xiao Lan's room. I'm just worried about Mother. Yin Xian coyly held Xiao Lin's arm and said. In fact, she had seen enough of Xiao Lan's face. Now Xiao Lan's face could not be seen by anyone at all. Her whole face was swollen like a pig's head, and there were even signs of festering. She was terrified just by looking at it, so she didn't want to stay there any longer. So, after her mother left, she also found an excuse to come out. It's still Xian, who cares about Mother the most? Xiao Lin said with a little resentment. From her tone, Yin Xian knew that her mother was blaming her father for not comforting her. Mother, Father is also very concerned about you, but you also know how tolerant Father is to Xiao Lan and the others. So don't blame him. Yin Xian consoled. Mother was just casually saying. Xiao Lin said, and then changed the topic. Oh right, how's Lung Ruoxue doing these past 2 days? Very good. I ate well and slept well. Yin Xian said with a smile. Isn't she worried that we'll blame her? Hearing Yin Xian's words, Xiao Lin was curious about Lung Ruoxue. Logically speaking, Lung Ruoxue should be a little scared when she let her beast bite Lan, right? However, from Xian words, it seemed as though the other party was treating it as though nothing had happened. This was really too strange. However, she then recalled that Lung Ruoxue had been brought back by her father-in-law. Even if her husband wanted to touch Lung Ruoxue, he would not dare to do so easily. Could this be the other party's trump card? Sister really doesn't seem to be worried, Yin Xian said after some thought. Even though she had told Lung Ruoxue more than once that she didn't need to worry about her father and that she would help her, she really didn't see a single trace of worry on Lung Ruoxue's face. Xian, bring me to meet that Lung Ruoxue tomorrow, Xiao Lin said after thinking for a while. Mother, if you want to stand up for Xiao Lan, then I advise you not to go. I really like that sister. Yin Xian reminded. Yo, it's rare for my daughter to fall in love with an outsider, and you don't even like Xiao Lan. Hearing Yin Xian's words, Xiao Lin chuckled and teased her. I've never liked her since I was young. Mother, it's not like you don't know. Yin Xian was very disapproving of her mother's teasing. I know, Xian has good taste, unlike your muddle-headed father. Xiao Lin sighed and said helplessly. The main reason why her husband loved Xiao Lan was that Xiao Lan resembled her when she was young. That was why he loved her even more. When she found out about this, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She couldn't see how Xiao Lan looked like her. Father was just deceived by that woman. Who asked that woman to be so good at acting? Yin Xian spoke up for her father. Xian, remember to bring Mother to see that Lung Ruoxue tomorrow. Xiao Lin reminded. All right, Mother. Have an early rest. They'll come to find you tomorrow. After Yin Xian finished speaking, she left with a happy face. The next morning, Yin Xian took Xiao Lin to Mingxi Garden. Looking at the beautiful woman in her early 30s, Lung Ruoxue understood that this person should be Yin Xian's mother. However, the mother and daughter really didn't have any similarities. Yin Xian's mother was very beautiful, and Yin Xian was cute. After Xiao Lin saw Lung Ruoxue, her beautiful eyes kept sizing her up. She was full of admiration in her heart. What a devastatingly beautiful woman. When she saw Lung Ruoxue, it was not hard for her to imagine why her niece would have a conflict with her. Hello, I'm Xian mother, Xiao Lin. Xiao Lin introduced herself. Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue said softly. I've always heard Xian talk about you. I finally have the chance to meet you today. Xiao Lin said with a smile. I also often hear Xian mention her mother. Madam Yin, did you come here today just to see me? Lung Ruoxue chuckled and asked directly. Yup, Xiao Lin replied with a smile. She did not expect Lung Ruoxue to be so direct. However, it was not hard to understand. Based on her relationship with Xiao Lan, it was no wonder that others would misunderstand. I thought that Madame Yin would come and question me. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. I don't care about her. Xiao Lin said directly. That's good. I like Xian a lot and am friends with Big Brother Yin. I also have a good impression of you. So I really don't want anything to happen between us just because of Miss Lan. Lung Ruoxue confessed. You know Xiao Lin didn't expect Lung Ruoxue to recognize her son. She was shocked, but she admired Lung Ruoxue's honesty. This was how a person should be. What's the point of wearing a mask all day? Yes, I met Brother E on the godly mainland. Lung Ruoxue explained simply. I see. Looking at Lung Ruoxue's strength, Xiao Lin understood that she must have come from the godly mainland. However, why did her master bring such a beautiful woman to the godly realm? She couldn't quite guess her master's motive. Sister, I didn't expect you to know my brother. You and our Yin family are really fated. I wonder when Big Brother will come back. I'm starting to miss him. When Yin Xian heard Lung Ruoxue's words, she was extremely excited. Big Brother Yin should be back soon. Lung Ruoxue guessed. If Brother Yin knew that she had been taken away by his grandfather, he would definitely return. No, Brother can't come back now. Suddenly, Yin Xian seemed to have thought of something and quickly said, What? Lung Ruoxue and Xiao Lin said in unison. After hearing Yin Xian's words, both of them were puzzled. Xiao Lan is here. If Big Brother returns, they will definitely take the opportunity to make Big Brother marry her. Yin Xian's face was full of worry. She didn't want that woman to become her sister-in-law. If that happened, she would be depressed to death. You underestimate Brother Yin. Although Brother Yin looks gentle, no one can force him to do anything he doesn't want to do. Lung Ruoxue replied calmly. Even though she had not spent much time with Yin Xiao, she could tell that Big Brother Yin was not an easy person to get along with. Even though he always had a smile on his face, people like that would find it hard to accept others. You don't know your brother as well as Shui. Xiao Lin chuckled as she looked at Lung Ruoxue. Her gaze became gentler and gentler, and she even addressed her as Shui. Furthermore, the more she looked at Lung Ruoxue, the more satisfied she was with her. She just did not know why the master of the family had brought Lung Ruoxue back to the Yin family. Mother, I'm just afraid that Big Brother will be soft-hearted. Didn't you say that men like to have tender feelings for women? Yin Xian said with an aggrieved expression. Xian, men have to be considerate of women according to their partners. If you treat every woman with tenderness, you can't have this kind of man. Lung Ruoxue reminded him with an evil smile. Shui is right. Xiao Lin nodded in agreement. Yes. Yin Xian nodded her head heavily and continued. Mother, did Xiao Lan's injured father say anything again? Shui, can you let me take a look at your snake? Xiao Lin suddenly said after hearing Yin Xian's words. Little fire, Madame Yin wants to see you. Lung Ruoxue rolled up her sleeves, revealing Fiery, who was wrapped around her wrist. Is this the snake that bit Lana? I really couldn't tell that such a small snake's poison was so powerful. Xiao Lin said in shock. She had never thought that Xiao Lan and the others would be bitten by such a small snake. It should be known that there were many kinds of snakes in the divine realm, and some of them were poisonous. However, those poisons could be detoxified with just one antidote pill. For those more poisonous ones, they would usually be fine after taking a good antidote pill. However, Xiao Lan's poison was getting worse the more she took the antidote pill. When she went to see Xiao Lan this morning, she found that her face had begun to fester. She was shocked at the time. Xiao's poison can't be cured by an ordinary antidote pill. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. The other party did not come to ask for Xiao's saliva, so it was almost impossible to cure Xiao Lan and the others. Really? Then how can we get rid of the poison in Xiaolan and the others' bodies? Yin asked curiously. We need to use Zayahu's saliva. Lung Ruoxue explained calmly. Sister, then you have to keep a close eye on Lil Fire. I'm afraid they'll come to steal the snake. Upon hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Yin quickly reminded her. Sure, do we really need this little snake's saliva to cure the poison in Lan Er's body? Xiaolin asked thoughtfully. Yes. Could it be that Madame Yin wants me to give them Lil Fire's saliva? Lung Ruoxue said. I'm just annoyed that they're crying and making a fuss all day. But this snake is yours, and the one they provoked is you. If you want to give it to me, it's fine. If you don't want it, it's fine. You don't have to give me face. Xiaolin was afraid that Lung Ruoxue would misunderstand, so she quickly explained. Chapter 1420, A Bet 1. Actually, it's not impossible to give them Zayahu's saliva. However, you can't give it to them easily. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. She had agreed to give Zayahu's saliva to the other party because of the Yin family. However, since the other party's biological aunt had already made it clear and didn't care whether she gave it to them or not, why should she give this free favor? Furthermore, with Miss Lan's personality, if you were to give it to her so easily, not only would she not be grateful to you, but she would also hate you even more for making her suffer. Therefore, Lung Ruoxue would never do something that would take a long time and not give you any benefits. If you want Lil Fire's saliva, sure, but he had to pay a corresponding price. Right, we can't give it to them so easily. We have to make them bleed a lot and let Xiaolan suffer for a few more days. Yin suggested after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. Hearing Yin's indignant words, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but chuckle. Just how much did Yin hate that Miss Lan? After all, she was her cousin, but she was so hated by her. Miss Lan was also quite a failure in life. She probably only cared about pleasing the elders and ignored the existence of Yin. She guessed in her heart, Sister, don't laugh. I'm telling the truth. Yin said, somewhat annoyed. I know you're telling the truth. Okay? Lung Ruoxue coaxed. Sister. Yin acted coquettishly as she tugged at Lung Ruoxue's sleeve and said with a hint of resentment. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Don't worry. Didn't I say that I wouldn't easily hand over Lil Fire's saliva to them? Lung Ruoxue promised. That's good. Sister, Lil Fire's poison is so powerful. Do you know? Xiaolan's face has started to fester today. It's so scary and disgusting. Yin said with a face full of fear. That's normal. If she had received treatment a few days later, she probably wouldn't have been able to keep her face. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Arg, it's true. Yin was shocked. Xiaolan cared about her face the most. If she really couldn't keep it, Xiaolan would probably go crazy. Shui, are you telling the truth? Xiaolin quickly asked. She was thinking about the consequences if Xiaolan's face was destroyed. Yes, if they can't get Zayahu's saliva and refine it into a pill within 3 days, then Zayahu's saliva will be useless, and her poison will never be cured, and it will often relapse. Lung Ruoxue explained with a smile. Zayahu's poison would be completely cured after 3 days, even without the antidote. However, this recovery was just an illusion. After a few days, it would still relapse, and the frequency of relapses would increase. The pain would be 10 times or even 100 times more than now. This was also the strong point of Zayahu's poison. What will happen if it reoccurs? Yin asked curiously. It will be at least 10 times more painful than now. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Arg, wouldn't that be killing her? Now, she's on the verge of death. Yin was left speechless. She really didn't expect that the little snake's poison was so powerful. I won't take her life, because it's not easy for her to even want to die. Lung Ruoxue corrected, implying that the poison would make Miss Lan's life a living hell. Lil Fire's really amazing. Yin said as she looked at the little flame on Lung Ruoxue's wrist with both love and fear. Little girl, don't be afraid. I don't bite people randomly. Feeling Yin Xian's gaze, Little Fire raised its little head and comforted her. Oh, can you not call me little girl? Yin Xian discussed. Then what should I call you? A woman? But I can't see how you look like a woman. Little Fire said honestly. Which part of me doesn't look like a woman? Yin Xian said, somewhat hurt by her self-esteem, and even deliberately puffed out her towering peaks. Woo! This little snake actually said that she didn't look like a woman. He really had no taste. It doesn't look like anything. Lil Fire said in disdain. You, sister, Lil Fire is bullying me. Yin Xian realized that she couldn't win against Little Fire, so she turned to Lung Ruoxue for help. Hee hee, Little Fire is just teasing you. Lung Ruoxue smiled as she tried to smooth things over. Women, I'm going to sleep. Lil Fire yawned and lazily closed its eyes. You're sleeping so early in the morning? Seeing that Lil Fire ignored everyone's existence and really closed his eyes, Yin Xian said in surprise. Little Fire likes to sleep. Lung Ruoxue said hurriedly. Xianer, you silly girl. Beastie's sleep is also a form of cultivation. Shaolin laughed as she watched her precious daughter interact with Lil Fire. She found it amusing no matter how she looked at it. This little red snake was too cute. Oh, Yin Xian nodded, not fully understanding. Shui, you wouldn't mind if I told my brother about the news you just told me, right? At this moment, Shaolin asked Lung Ruoxue. Although she didn't like Shaolan, she couldn't just watch a girl disfigure her face. She knew how important looks were to a woman in the divinity. I don't mind. I just want you to tell them. Lung Ruoxue laughed. That's good. Sure. Tell me what conditions you have. Shaolin said, relieved. I'll tell them. I only have 3 conditions. First, Shaolan has to personally apologize to me, Grape, and Lotus Seed. Second, of course, she has to compensate us for the mental damage we have suffered. Naturally, it's to pay for Lil Fire's saliva. Lung Ruoxue stated the 3 conditions nonchalantly, and these 3 conditions were not something that she came up with on the spot. Good. No problem, Shaolin nodded. Lung Ruoxue's 3 conditions were reasonable. After all, it was Shaolan and the others who were the unreasonable ones. Seeing how confident Shaolin was, Lung Ruoxue didn't think she would agree to her conditions so easily. However, that wasn't something she should be concerned about, and she didn't mean to make things difficult for her. After Shaolin chatted with Lung Ruoxue for a while more at Mingxi Garden, she left with Yin Xian. After they left, Grape couldn't help but ask, Miss, the Xiao family will definitely not agree to the 3 conditions you mentioned. Although she was a maidservant, she knew the 3 people from the Xiao family very well. They were not the kind of people who would pluck hair from their own bodies. Asking them to compensate was no different from asking for their lives. Chapter 1421. A bet too. How do you know it 1T? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. Miss, I'm not like those 3 from the Xiao family that I just met today. They only know how to freeload at the Yin family. If you want them to pay for compensation, the sun will rise from the west. Grape said with absolute certainty. Grape, why don't we make a bet? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. A bet? Miss, I don't have anything of value. Grape said honestly. I don't need anything. I just need to agree to 1 condition. Lung Ruoxue explained. That's good. Let's bet. Miss, I bet that the Xiao family won't pay any compensation, and the Yin family will have to pay for it in the end. Grape said confidently. After all, this was not the first time such a thing had happened. If it's the Yin family paying the compensation, you win, Lung Ruoxue said. Good. Hee hee. Miss, I'm definitely going to win. Grape said happily. Grape, it's too early to be happy. I've never lost a bet before. Don't underestimate your enemy. Lung Ruoxue reminded him with a smile. Miss, I know that family very well, and I won't lose. Grape said with confidence. That's good. Then let's wait and see. Lung Ruoxue laughed in an enigmatic manner. After Shaolin and Yin Xian left Mingxi Garden, they went straight to the courtyard where Shaolan and the others were staying. However, when she told Xiao Hua and his wife about Lung Ruoxue's condition and the method to cure Shaolan's injury, she did not see their gratitude as she had hoped. Instead, she was blamed and blamed by them. Sister, this woman was really too much. She clearly hurt Lan, so how could she put forward such a rude condition? This was really preposterous and bullying. Do you think there's no one in the Xiao family? Do you think our Yin family is easy to bully? Ru Ping roared in anger. Aunt, what does this have to do with our Yin clan? They asked for it from you, not from us. Please don't casually mention our Yin family. Otherwise, if the other members of the Yin family heard it, they would misunderstand. Yin Xian reminded, the adults are talking. Why is a child like you interrupting? Hearing Yin Xian's words, Ru Ping said unhappily, I'm no longer a child. Yin Xian's face was red as she said loudly. She said this because it was not appropriate for her mother to say it, but the other party used her being a child as an excuse. It was really ridiculous. When Xiao Lan interrupted, why didn't she say that Xiao Lan was also a child? Sister, Xian is really too unruly. When the elders are talking, it's not her place as a child to interrupt, and she even talked back to the elders. Seeing that Yin Xian didn't give her any face, Ru Ping turned to Xiao Lin and complained. How can my child not know the rules? Was there anything wrong with what she said? The Yin clan is the Yin clan, and the Xiao clan is the Xiao clan. They really shouldn't be mixed together. Xiao Lin didn't want to argue with his sister-in-law. After all, it wouldn't be nice if this kind of thing spread out, and it would also damage the Yin family's reputation. However, her mistake was that she shouldn't have said that Xian didn't know the rules. Which parent would be willing to hear others slander their precious daughter? Sister, don't be angry. Ru Ping was too worried about Lan. That's why she spoke without thinking. Please be magnanimous and don't mind her. Seeing that Xiao Lin was getting angry again, Xiao Hua quickly spoke up. He kept giving his wife a look, signaling her to shut up. In his opinion, his sister was his biggest backer, and he could not get into a conflict with her because of his daughter. It would not be good for his position in the Xiao family, and it would only benefit the other members of the Xiao family. I won't argue with her, but I'll make it clear to you today. I'm here to tell you this news out of goodwill, but it's fine if you don't appreciate it. However, this matter was caused by Lan, and now she's asking for compensation before she's willing to give you the little snake saliva. Our Yin clan won't interfere in this matter, so don't expect the Yin clan to compensate you for this. Xian, let's go. After Xiao Lin finished speaking, she left Xiao Lan's room with Yin Xian expressionlessly. After leaving the room, Yin Xian said excitedly and exaggeratedly, Mother, you really are my mother. I'm so touched. Silly girl, when has mother not been on your side? Xiao Lin said helplessly. There were some things that she didn't say because of her brother, but her sister-in-law shouldn't have accused her daughter of being unruly in front of her. This was something that no parent could tolerate. Mother, I feel that it's not enough for us to only know about this matter. We have to tell father about it. Otherwise, if father is soft-hearted, he might help them pay the compensation. In fact, it's not like they can't afford the compensation that sister asked for. Yin Xian reminded. Before she and her mother had left Mingxi Garden, her elder sister had given them a list of the items that Lung Ruoxue had requested for compensation. On that list, both of them had contributed a little because they had given their opinions. After all, no one knew better than them what the other party could offer. Xiao Hua was not the head of the family yet, so there was a limit to what he could offer. Therefore, if Lung Ruoxue's request was beyond what they could afford, the Yin family would be the one to pay the compensation. This was something that Yin Xian did not want to see. Thus, after Yin Xian expressed her thoughts, Lung Ruoxue agreed to compensate Xiao Lan's family as much as they could. You'll find a chance to talk to your father. Xiao Lin nodded. Mother, don't look for an opportunity. Let's go find father now and talk about this. Otherwise, if uncle and the rest were to get there first and father agreed, then we would have worked in vain. Yin Xian quickly said, You little girl, fine. Then let's go find your father and tell him. Xiao Lin said with a helpless smile, Hee, I knew that mother is the best. Yin Xian said with a fawning smile. Then, the mother and daughter went to Yin Ping's study room. However, at this time, Yin Ping was discussing some matters with the elders. When Yin Ping finished his discussion and came out of the study room, he saw his beloved wife and daughter sitting on the stone chairs in the courtyard waiting for him. "Sister Lin, Xin'er, why are you guys here?" Yin Ping said with some surprise. Chapter 1422, A Bet 3, Father. "We're here to talk to you." Yin Xian held Yin Ping's arm and said coyly, "Oh, what was it? You even came all the way here to find me?" Yin Ping didn't understand. At this moment, a guard came over and reported, "Acting Patriarch, Xiaohua has sent someone to invite you. He said that he has something to tell you." "What's the matter?" Yin Ping frowned and said with obvious displeasure. These few days, he had been annoyed to death by the couple. He had never thought that they would be so annoying before. However, he was getting more and more impatient with them. Yin Xian and her daughter saw Yin Ping's expression and laughed in their hearts. It seemed that the other party also wanted to tell Yin Ping about this matter, but unfortunately, they were the first ones to do so. With them around, Yin Ping naturally couldn't leave them to see Xiaohua. After all, his wife and daughter were the most important. The person didn't say. The guard also felt Yin Ping's displeasure and quickly said, "You go and tell the person that I have something to do now and will be there later." Yin Ping thought for a moment. It definitely could not go over. If he didn't go over, Xiaohua and his wife would keep sending people to find him. Now that his wife and daughter had something to tell him, he naturally had to take care of his wife and daughter first. "Yes," the guard replied and turned to leave. "Sister Lin, Xian'er, you can speak your mind now." After the guard left, Yin Ping spoke again. When his wife and daughter heard the guard's report, he didn't miss the expression on their faces. "Mother, you can tell father," Yin Xian said. "Yeah." Xiao Lin nodded, then told them about Lung Ruoxu's request and their visit to her. After Yin Ping heard this, his brows furrowed even deeper, and he didn't say a word. It was unknown what he was thinking. Xiao Lin and Xian saw his expression and didn't disturb him. After a while, "If Xiaohua wants to see me, it's also about this matter, right?" "Yes." Xiao Lin and Xian nodded. "Sister Lin, in the past, whenever Xiaohua had any problems, he would always ask me for help. If I don't help him this time, I'm afraid he'll have other thoughts." Yin Ping said with some difficulty. He understood the meaning of his wife and daughter. They wanted Xiaohua and his wife to pay the compensation themselves. However, how could that couple be willing to pay the price? "Father, it's precisely because you've meddled too much in the past that we can't meddle with them this time. This matter was originally Cousin Lan's fault and Sister Shui has evidence. If the elders of the clan find out about this evidence, you can forget about convincing the public as the acting patriarch in the future." Yin Xian reminded, "It's that serious?" Yin Ping said as he looked at his wife and daughter. He only knew that Xiao Lan had a conflict with the people living in Mingxi Garden and was beaten up by their beastie. However, he didn't know the exact reason. Xiao Lan's guards had all come to the same conclusion and insisted that it had nothing to do with Xiao Lan. That was why he was in a difficult position. If it had nothing to do with Xiao Lan, then it could only be the other party's provocation. However, that woman was brought back by his father. If he didn't say anything and just dealt with her, there would be a big problem. He also had no way of explaining it to his father, the head of the family. Thus, he could not make up his mind. Yes, Xiao Lin and Yin Xian both nodded. They had seen the evidence in Lung Ruoxu's hands, so they were even more determined to not help Xiao Lan this time. Otherwise, their husband and father would be in trouble. Seeing that his wife and daughter were so certain, Yin Ping naturally made up his mind. However, he still said to Xiao Lin apologetically, "Sister Lin, although I really want to help Lanner this time," he said. Before Yin Ping could finish, he was interrupted by Xiao Lin. "Brother Ping, you've already done enough. I can't let you be blamed by your clansmen for what happened to the Xiao family." She knew that Yin Ping's protection of Xiaohua's family over the years had caused many clansmen to be dissatisfied. The reason why Xiao Lan dared to show off in the Yin family was also because she had her husband's support. Otherwise, how could she have such courage to not even put her own daughter in her eyes? Xiao Lin was a very protective person. Originally, Xiao Lan was her niece, and she doted on her. However, Xiao Lan used her love to bully Xian. If she had not accidentally overheard the conversation between Xiao Lan and the maidservant, she would probably still dote on Xiao Lan as much as she did before. Ever since then, she found Xiao Lan more and more unpleasant to the eye. Xiao Lan was so obedient in front of her, but she was so arrogant in front of others. She didn't even care about her daughter. This was something she couldn't tolerate. Sister Lin, thank you for your understanding. Yin Ping was very touched because his wife was a sensible person. Over the years, although his wife had told him not to take care of Xiao Hua's family, he still did his best to take care of them out of his love for his wife and the gratitude of Xiao Hua's parents for raising his wife. He also knew that it was because of his protection that Xiao Hua's family status in the Xiao family was getting higher and higher. Even in the Yin family, no one dared to look down on them just because they were in-laws. At least on the surface, that was the case. He knew that some of the clan members were dissatisfied with Xiao Hua and the others, but he ignored them. After all, they were his wife's relatives. Brother Ping, you've done enough for me. Xiao Hua is already an adult, so let him handle the future matters by himself. Xiao Lin said bluntly. This was also what she meant. Good. They'll listen to you. Yin Ping said affectionately. Seeing her parents looking at each other affectionately in front of her, even forgetting about her existence as a daughter, Yin Xian was both happy and conflicted. She was happy that her parents had a good relationship and there were no group of annoying half-brothers and sisters at home, but conflicted that in front of her parents, she had become heir. Sigh. Should she be more tactful and go to the side to play? Yin Xian thought. At the same time, Yin Xian didn't disturb her parents' love and quietly slipped away. By the time Xiao Lin and Yin Ping reacted, there were only the two of them left in the large courtyard. The two of them looked at each other and smiled, then went back to their rooms hand in hand. After staying with Xiao Lin for a while, Yin Ping unwillingly went to the courtyard of Xiao Hua and the others. Chapter 1423, A Bet for Brother-in-Law. You finally come. As soon as Yin Ping entered Xiao Lan's room, Ru Ping cried with snot and tears. Yin Ping saw this and frowned slightly, then said indifferently, What happened to you? Brother-in-law, you have to help our Lan, or was there any justice left in this world? They bullied my Lan, and now they want us to compensate for their mental loss. They were really bullying him. Do you think our Xiao family is easy to bully? Just as Yin Ping asked this, Ru Ping began to speak in rapid succession. If he had not heard his wife and daughter's conditions beforehand, he would have thought that they had gone too far. However, he knew very well that Xiao Hua could afford the conditions. All these years, with his protection, Xiao Hua had taken a lot of money from his family. Now, they were crying and quarreling with him only because they wanted him to pay the compensation to save Xiao Lan. However, he had promised his wife and daughter that he would not interfere in this matter. Therefore, no matter how much they cried and quarreled, no matter how hard they tried, he would not care. It was all useless. After crying for a while, Ru Ping's heart sank when she saw that Yin Ping didn't say a word. Then, she cried again. Brother-in-law, Xiao Lan is your most beloved niece, so her business is your business. You can't just stand by and do nothing. Are you done? Yin Ping, who was annoyed by the noise, roared. His roar scared Ru Ping so much that she didn't dare to cry anymore. Brother-in-law, you have to help Lan. Ru Ping sobbed and said softly. I've heard about this from Sister Lin and discussed it with the elders of the family. The elders think that this matter was caused by Lan, so you should deal with it yourself. Our Yin family will not interfere in this matter. Yin Ping brought out the elders and said, Brother-in-law, how could this be? Lan, I got into trouble in your Yin family. You also promised to give us an explanation. Ru Ping and Xiao Hua quickly said, I said I'll give you an explanation because you told me this had nothing to do with Lan. However, as far as I know, this was caused by Lan. Shouldn't you tell me the truth? Yin Ping asked indifferently. Brother-in-law, you've watched Lan grow up. Don't you know what kind of child she is? How could she do such a thing? Ru Ping quibbled guiltily. You know better than me whether she can do it or not. Let's not talk about this now. You'd better quickly prepare the compensation that the other party wants. Saving Lan is more important. As for the other things, wait until Lan is better. You must gather all the items within 3 days. Otherwise, you will be responsible for the consequences. Ping coldly reminded. Brother-in-law, they were the ones who injured Lan and now Lan has fainted from the pain. Why should we compensate them? This was simply too unreasonable. This kind of thing couldn't be explained anywhere, right? Besides, even if there's a need for compensation, they should be the ones paying us. Ru Ping reminded him with dissatisfaction. The thing that can save Lan is in his hands now. He wants you to compensate him. Can you refuse? Ping said unhappily. He really didn't want to ask if they were close, but he had to remind them. Brother-in-law, your clan is one of the 8 great divine domains and has a transcendent status in the divine realm. No matter what identity that woman has, since she's currently living in the clan, shall have to obediently hand over the snake's saliva with just a word from you. We don't need to waste our time. Ru Ping said with a fawning smile. That woman won't listen to me. You'd better do as she says. I can't help you with this. Ping didn't even think and rejected. Brother-in-law, what's the identity of that woman? Even you can't do anything to her? Ru Ping asked curiously. She wouldn't say that the girl had an ambiguous relationship with Ping now, in case they annoyed him again. Then they wouldn't be able to come to the family in the future. Ping was their big backer, so they couldn't offend him. It's none of your business who she is. In short, don't mess with her. Prepare the compensation she asked for in 3 days. The most important thing is to save Lan Ping once again reminded him. Before knowing his father's intentions, he didn't dare to touch that girl. He had already said what he needed to say. As for whether Xiao Hua's family would do as he said, that wasn't something he could control. 3 days later, Lung Ruoxue didn't receive compensation from the other party as she had hoped. However, she didn't seem to be in a hurry. She continued to lie on the deck chair leisurely and bask in the sun. Seeing this, Grape chuckled and teased. Miss, you've lost our bet. Chapter 1424. True Colors Revealed. 1 Grape. I didn't lose, and you didn't win. Don't forget who we've bet on paying the compensation. The Xiao family hasn't paid the compensation yet, and the family hasn't paid for them either. So our bet isn't over yet. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. But miss, it's already been 3 days. Grape reminded. Yes, I asked them to send the compensation and the money to buy small fire saliva within 3 days, but they refused to send it over, so we can't do anything about it. So, our bet isn't over yet. Lung Ruoxue laughed. Miss, do you mean that the bet will continue? Grape asked with some uncertainty. Why not continue? They'll definitely send the compensation over. It's just a matter of a few days. Lung Ruoxue said confidently. She could even guess the main reason why the other party was not willing to follow her instructions and send the compensation over. It was because Xiao Lan's injuries were showing signs of improvement. The truth was just as Lung Ruoxue had guessed. Ever since Lung Ruoxue had stated her conditions, Xiao Hua and his wife had discussed for a long time. They had even looked for Ping a few times, hoping that the other party would compensate them. However, Ping had not relented. At the same time, Xiao Lan's injuries had also shown signs of improvement, so they had not thought much of it. In 3 days, the swelling on Xiao Lan's face had subsided, and the festering parts had begun to form knots. Her appearance was slowly recovering. Seeing this, Xiao Hua and his wife were even more relieved. As for Xiao Lin's warning, they had completely forgotten about it. In a room, Xiao Lan sat in front of the dressing table. Looking at her restored appearance in the mirror, she was very happy. That damned snake and woman had caused him to suffer for so many days. He would definitely not let them off. Thinking of this, she summoned the maidservant and whispered something in her ear before the maidservant left the room. Lana, what did you just say to the maidservant? Sitting by the bed and looking at her daughter, Ru Ping asked curiously. It's nothing. I told her to send people to help me keep an eye on the 3 people from Bright Stream Garden. If there's a situation, immediately come and tell me. Oof. They caused me to suffer for so many days. If I let them go, would I still be Xiaolan? Xiaolan said viciously, a sinister look flashing across her beautiful face. Lanner, after all, this is the Yin family. Because of you, we have already made them unhappy. If we cause any trouble at this time, it will not be good for us. Ru Ping reminded. Mother, I know what to do. You still don't trust me. Xiaolan said in a spoiled manner. Of course, I'm at ease with Lanner, but your father, Ru Ping stopped halfway, for she suddenly remembered that Lanner had just recovered from her injury. She didn't want to tell her about this, or she would be annoyed. Mother, are you trying to say that aunt and uncle are a little dissatisfied with you? Xiaolan said. Although she had been in a daze most of the time these past few days, she could still hear some of their conversations. Yup, your father went to look for Xiao Lin many times, but Xiao Lin didn't see him, and Yin Ping didn't either. They had really gone too far. Is this what an elder sister and brother-in-law should do? As soon as she thought of the cold treatment she had received in the past 2 days, Ru Ping had a stomach full of complaints. Originally, it was fine if her daughter didn't know. She didn't intend to say it now to annoy her daughter. But since her daughter knew, there was no harm in saying it. Mother, you shouldn't be complaining. We should be thinking about how to make aunt and uncle treat us the same as before. After all, we can't do without their support. In contrast to Ru Ping's anger, Xiaolan was still very calm. She knew very well that without the support of her aunt and uncle, her family would never have the status they had today. Therefore, she was not willing to give up such a backer, no matter what. Who asked her to still think about the position of the future mistress of the Yin family? Of course I know that, but they don't even want to see us now. Ru Ping couldn't help but mutter. That's why we should think about how we can salvage the situation. Mother, come with me to visit aunt and uncle later. My injuries have healed, so I have to thank them properly. They won't reject this reason again, right? Xiaolan said with a smile. What Lanner said makes sense. Ru Ping nodded. Even if Xiao Lin and Yin Ping were dissatisfied with the couple, they wouldn't refuse to see Lanner. After all, Lanner had been doted on since she was a child. With Lanner around, their relationship would definitely improve, she thought confidently. After Xiaolan had dressed herself up in front of the dressing table, she took Ru Ping to the courtyard where Yin Ping and Xiao Lin lived. As soon as they arrived at the courtyard, they heard a faint laughter coming from inside. Xiaolan immediately felt a little upset, because she was very familiar with this voice. It was her cousin's voice. She was laughing so happily now, so she must be chatting with her aunt. In the past, when she chatted with her aunt, she would also smile very happily. However, she didn't know when it started, but their relationship became colder and colder. Although she kept trying to please her aunt was always indifferent to her. This made her puzzled no matter how much she thought about it. She really couldn't remember what she did wrong to anger her aunt. After entering the courtyard, Xiaolan saw her aunt sitting on a stone chair in the garden. Yin was talking to her in a very low voice, and she even laughed happily from time to time. Immediately, jealousy welled up in her heart. Why was Yin so happy? All of this should have been hers. However, it was taken away by Yin. No, she had to regain her position in her aunt's heart. She couldn't let Yin be so proud. After she made up her mind, she quickly walked in front of Xiao Lin and bowed respectfully. She then slowly said, Aunt, Lanner is here to visit you. Lanner is better? He should be resting in his room. How can he run around? Xiao Lin looked at Xiao Lan and said with a faint smile. In fact, what she meant was, don't run around the Yin family and don't come to her place. However, she knew that Xiao Lan would definitely not understand the hidden meaning of her words. Even if she did, she would pretend not to know. Chapter 1425, True Colors Revealed, 2. Thank you for your concern, Aunt. Your niece's body is fine now. Xiao Lan stood next to Xiao Lin very politely and even tried to fill Xiao Lin's cup with tea. However, the teapot was snatched away by Yin Xian. Yin Xian smiled. Cousin's body has just recovered. It's not good for her to overwork herself. Just leave this kind of rough work to me. Younger Biao's sister is thoughtful, Xiaolan said as she suppressed her anger. Lin, if there's nothing important, you could go back to your room and have a good rest. I won't be sending you off. Xiao Lin said. Aunt, Lanner is here to see you, Xiaolan said in a slightly aggrieved tone, and a layer of mist appeared in her beautiful eyes. Yup, sister. Lan Er's injury has just recovered, and she's in a hurry to see you. Look at how filial she is. Ru Ping also chimed in. I know that Lan is filial. I appreciate it. However, Lan Er's body has just recovered, and I can't bear to see her overwork herself, so I'd better let her go back to her room to rest, Xiao Lin said with concern. Ru Ping seemed to want to say something, but she was pulled back by Xiao Lan, so she kept quiet. I'm really grateful for Aunt's care and concern. They'll go back first. They'll come back to see you in a few days, Xiao Lan said in a very understanding manner. After she finished speaking, she bowed to Xiao Lin, then turned around and left with her mother. Out of the yard, Ru Ping asked unwillingly, Lin, we're leaving just like that? What else can we do? Let's go and see Uncle, Xiao Lan suggested. Ru Ping nodded, and then the two walked toward Yin Ping's study. However, when they reached the door of Yin Ping's study, they couldn't go in because the guard at the door told them that the substitute family head had important things to deal with and wouldn't see anyone. The two of them had no choice but to return to their own residence. In fact, Yin Ping didn't go to the study room today. He stayed in his room and watched his wife and daughter talking and laughing in the garden. When Xiao Lan and her daughter came, he saw them, but he didn't go out. After they left, Yin Ping opened the door and walked into the garden. Father, you're finally willing to come out. Yin Xian, who was chatting with her mother, teased Yin Ping after seeing him. You little girl, you even dare to tease your own father. You're really looking for a beating. Yin Ping patted Yin Xian's head as a token gesture. Mother, look, father actually hit me. You have to make the decision for me. Yin Xian pouted her pink lips and complained. Bad girl, you're getting naughty, or the older you get, good hit, Xiao Lin said with a smile. Mother, how can you forget your daughter when you're with her? Yin Xian's mouth pouted higher and higher. He pretended to be dissatisfied. Ha ha. Hearing Yin Xian's complaint, Yin Ping and Xiao Lin couldn't help but laugh. You guys are too bad. I'm going to ignore you guys. I'm going to find my sister to play. Yin Xian stomped her feet, turned around, and ran out of the courtyard. After Yin Xian left, Yin Ping furrowed his brows and said, Sister Lin, has Lan Er's injury really recovered? He hadn't visited Xiao Lan in the past few days, but he had heard that Xiao Lan's injuries were slowly recovering. He didn't see it clearly in the room just now, so he asked, All right, however, that's only on the surface. Xiao Lin sighed helplessly. Xiao Hua and his wife's short-sightedness had harmed Xiao Lan, and Xiao Lan had brought this upon herself. Therefore, she would have to bear this bitter fruit alone. Then can we trust Lung Ruoxu's words? Are you lying to us? Yin Ping still had some doubts. To be honest, he had never seen such a poison in his life. Not only could it heal on its own, but it was also said that if it relapsed, it would become more and more serious. If that was really the case, then wasn't this poison very terrifying and a little too vicious? I believe her. She has no reason to lie to us. If it's only for money, it's even more impossible. Besides, the poison in Xiao Lan's body has indeed been cured, as she said. As for what will happen in the future, we can only take it one step at a time. Xiao Lin said softly, AI, we've watched Lan grow up, and I really don't want her to be like what you've said. So, I'd rather that Lung Ruoxu was lying to us than let Lan suffer for the rest of her life. Yin Ping couldn't bear to say, Brother Ping, I understand how you feel, but we're not related to Lung Ruoxu in any way. She has no reason to lie to us about such a matter. Furthermore, I believe that Lung Ruoxu isn't that kind of person, even though I haven't spent much time with her. Xiao Lin comforted her gently. Yes. Yin Ping nodded his head. He could choose not to believe Lung Ruoxu, but he had no choice but to believe his own wife. Brother Ping, am now a member of the Yin family, so I don't plan to care about the Xiao family's affairs anymore. What will happen to Xiao Hua's family in the future will be up to them. After thinking for a while, Xiao Lin spoke in a serious tone. Sister Lin, I understand. Yin Ping gently pulled Xiao Lin into his arms, but he didn't say anything. The two just kept hugging each other, and a faint warmth surrounded them. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue was still basking in the sun in the garden as usual. Yin Xian's voice could be heard from afar. Sister, I'm here to see you. Before they even entered Mingxi Garden, Yin Xian had already called out loudly. As soon as she ran into the garden of Mingxi Garden, she saw Lung Ruoxue lying comfortably on a recliner with two beautiful maidservants serving tea and water. Sister, your life is so comfortable. I'm starting to envy you, Yin Xian said with a hint of jealousy. Living in such a family clan, there was no way one could live as they wished. Therefore, she was really envious, jealous, and hateful of Lung Ruoxue's carefreeness. If you want to, you could be as free as me. Lung Ruoxue opened her beautiful eyes and smiled. Yeah, it's easier said than done. Yin Xian sighed and said helplessly, the key is whether you want to be carefree or not. How strong is your desire to be carefree? Lung Ruoxue reminded. Sister, of course I want to be like you, but I have too many things I can't let go of, so I can't do what you're doing. Yin Xian said with a bit of distress. Although she was still young, her future had already been arranged, and she had no choice. Chapter 1426, True Colors Revealed 3. Xianer, you're still young. Don't think about these annoying things. What's the matter? Lung Ruoxue changed the topic. Sister, can't I just come and find you for no reason? Yin Xian pouted her little mouth and pretended to be dissatisfied. You haven't been here for a few days. There must be something going on today. Lung Ruoxue said with absolute certainty, a faint smile on her beautiful face. Hee, I'm really here for something today. Yin Xian felt a little embarrassed when she heard Lung Ruoxue's words. What's the matter? Speak. Lung Ruoxue's face was full of I was right. Sister, the wounds on Xiao Lan's face have all healed, and she's no different from before. What's going on? Yin Xian asked, somewhat puzzled. Didn't I tell you? She has to take a pill to detoxify her injuries within 3 days. Otherwise, even if she recovers, it will relapse. Once it reoccurs, it will become more and more serious, and there will be no medicine to cure it. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. The Xiao family would not be willing to fork out the money for the next 3 days, so they would have to bear the consequences themselves. Sister, then when will her injury relapse? Yin Xian asked curiously. This is hard to say. However, it's best for her not to eat some stimulating food, or else the relapse will be faster. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Stimulating food? What do you mean, sister? Yin Xian asked with a face full of question marks. It's best not to eat fish and the like. Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. Arg, Xiaolan loves to eat fish, and she would eat it almost every 2 or 3 days. If I don't let her eat fish, she won't be able to take it. Yin Xian exclaimed. Oh, I think you can kindly remind her not to eat fish. Lung Ruoxue smiled indifferently as she suggested. Why? I don't want to. Yin Xian immediately objected. She couldn't wait for Xiaolan's injury to relapse. Who cared what she ate? She's your cousin. After all, if you show her some concern, you can show your kindness. Sometimes we still have to act. Lung Ruoxue reminded. What if she doesn't eat fish anymore after I remind her? After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Yin Xian said in distress. Shall listen to you? If she listens to you and stops eating fish, the poison will take longer to take effect, but it's not impossible for it to relapse. What are you worried about? Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. She could tell that Yin Xian did not just hate her cousin. In fact, the reason why she had asked Yin Xian to remind Xiaolan was not only to give Yin Xian a chance to show her affection, but also because she was sure that Miss Lan would not listen to Yin Xian. Instead, she would think that Yin Xian was deliberately trying to provoke her and make her remember the painful experience. Xiao Lan was such a self-righteous and ungrateful person. No matter what she did, she would always think that she was not in the wrong and that the fault was always with others. If others' words or actions did not suit her, they would be going against her. She had seen people like Xiao Lan before, but it was rare to see someone as outrageous as her. Hee hee. What my sister said makes sense. Since that's the case, it'll do her a favor. However, she won't be grateful to me. Yin Xian said, clearly aware of the situation. It's her business whether she's grateful or not. You just have to do what you should do. Lung Ruoxue said calmly. Sister, you're so bad, but I like it. Yin Xian said softly. After she finished speaking, she chatted with Lung Ruoxue for a while more before leaving Mingxi Garden impatiently to return the favor. Watching Yin Xian's back, Grape asked in confusion, Miss, why was little Miss so happy? Isn't it just to deliver a letter? She's gloating over my misfortune. Lung Ruoxue said in understanding. She then instructed Lotus Seed, Lotus, go and tell the guards outside the courtyard that there seems to be suspicious people near Bright Stream Garden and have them pay more attention. Ever since the matter of Miss Lan had occurred, the head butler of the Yin clan had arranged for guards to be stationed outside Bright Stream Garden. In the name of protection, it was actually to prevent the same thing from happening again. Who asked her to have such a powerful little snake? Yes, Miss. Lotus Seed replied. After bowing, she turned and left. Miss, how do you know that there are suspicious people outside? Grape's face was full of admiration. Miss didn't even leave the house and still knew that someone was secretly monitoring her outside. She was really amazing. Weren't you the one who told me? Lung Ruoxue raised her eyebrows and teased. Did I? Grape's face was full of question marks. She couldn't remember saying such words to Miss. Besides, she didn't have any evidence. Of course I do. Lung Ruoxue nodded with certainty. The truth was, Grape had never told her about it. She could only tell from Grape's face. Who asked this girl to go out once and come back with a long face? It made it impossible for Lung Ruoxue to pretend that she did not see it. Moreover, she did not think that it was a big deal to be monitored outside. The people sent by the head butler were also monitoring her brazenly. I've forgotten. Grape said gloomily. It's okay. Everyone has times when they forget things. Lung Ruoxue was laughing in her heart, but she still spoke in a comforting tone. At this time, Lotus Seed walked in from outside, accompanied by the guard outside Bright Stream Garden. In the guard's hand was a short, ordinary-looking man. The man's face was full of fear and guilt. Miss, we've caught him. Lotus Seed said happily. Oh, you caught him so quickly? Lung Ruoxue was a little surprised. She really didn't know if it was because the Yin family's guards were highly efficient or if the person monitoring them was too stupid. How could they be caught so easily? She didn't feel a sense of accomplishment. Miss, he's too stupid, hiding in the tree in broad daylight and wearing such eye-catching clothes. It's impossible for us to pretend not to see him. Lotus Seed helplessly pointed at the man's white clothes. Hearing Lotus Seed's words, Grape could not help but laugh. AI. It seemed that the other party was really too stupid. Lung Ruoxue was also very helpless about this. So the other party had sent this person here to add to their laughingstock. Chapter 1427. True Colors Revealed. 4. Let him go. Lung Ruoxue's forehead was dripping with cold sweat as she spoke indifferently. Miss, how can we let him go so easily? Lotus Seed was somewhat puzzled. Didn't Miss send her out to catch this person? Now that they've been caught, why are they letting them go without even asking? If we don't let him go, are we still going to let him stay for dinner? Lung Ruoxue reminded. Then let him go. Lotus Seed understood. Miss was disdainful of this person for being useless. When the guard heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he gave a slight bow and left with the man who was so frightened that his face had turned pale. After they left, Grape could not help but ask, Miss, do you know who sent that person? Do you still need to ask? Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. But it's also possible that they were sent by someone else from the Yin family. Grape reminded. Because of Xiao Lan's incident, Many people in the Yin family knew about the existence of the young lady and were very curious about her identity. So, wasn't it normal to send people to monitor her? If the Yin family wants to know my identity, they could just ask your head butler. However, they will not be interested in my every move. Lung Ruoxue was very certain. Then what did Xiao Lan want to do by sending people here? Right now, she can't enter Bright Stream Garden, and the young lady can't leave. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Grape frowned and said in a conflicted manner, "Why are you thinking about this? No matter what her goal is, she will only reap what she sowed in the end." After Lung Ruoxue finished speaking, she lay back on the recliner and closed her eyes. At the same time, Yin Xian also went to Xiao Lan's residence. In the room, Xiao Lan indifferently looked at Yin Xian and coldly said, "Xianer, why did you suddenly think of coming to see me? Back in the garden, you clearly didn't want to see me." "Cousin, you're right. I don't want to see you. However, I've received some news that has something to do with you, so I'm here to tell you. We're relatives after all," Yin Xian said with a smile. "What news?" Xiao Lan was a little puzzled. She didn't think that her cousin, who had hated her since she was young, would tell her anything useful. "Cousin, didn't uncle and auntie tell you that your injuries are only temporary? ITLL relapse after a while, and ITLL get more and more serious each time?" Yin Xian asked curiously. In fact, she knew that her uncle and aunt wouldn't tell Xiao Lan about this, so she asked this on purpose. "What are you talking about? Are you cursing me?" As expected, Xiao Lan said angrily after hearing Yin Xian's words, "Cousin, I'm telling the truth. How could I curse you? Originally, your injury could have been completely healed, but unfortunately, uncle and aunt can't bear to part with money, so I'm afraid that there's no way to detoxify your poison forever. However, as long as you don't eat stimulating food, the speed of the relapse should be slower," Yin Xian said with a faint smile. "Don't you talk nonsense in front of me. I know you're jealous of me, so you're trying to make me angry, right? I won't fall for your trick." "Yin Xian, you're just a little girl. How could you possibly win against me? Aunt and uncle love me the most. If I tell them these words, which side do you think they will stand on?" After calming down a little, Xiao Lan suppressed her anger and said, although Yin Xian's words made her very angry, she could not be fooled by Yin Xian. She would not believe Yin Xian's words. "Cousin, since you don't believe me, then I have nothing to say. However, I still have to tell you, don't eat fish and other stimulating food. Otherwise, your face will still rot." Yin Xian reminded him again, but she was secretly laughing in her heart. Her sister was right. Xiao Lan didn't believe her. "Pa!" As soon as Yin Xian's voice fell, her lovely face was slapped, and half of her face immediately swelled up. At this time, Xiao Lan's door was suddenly opened. Seeing Xiao Lin, Yin Ping, and her parents appear in her room, Xiao Lan was stunned. She even forgot to take back her hand that was raised in the air. "Aunt, uncle, why are you guys here?" After coming back to her senses, Xiao Lan quickly withdrew her hand and asked with an embarrassed expression. She didn't expect to be caught red-handed when she hit Yin Xian. What should she do? Her mind turned quickly, and she was extremely anxious. Chapter 1428, As a Witness 1. "We're here to see you, Lanner, but we didn't expect to see this," Xiao Lin said coldly. Then, she walked to Yin Xian and said with a distressed look, "Xian, poor child, you don't have to come and see her anymore." "Aunt, this is all a misunderstanding. It's none of my business. It was younger cousin's sister who provoked me, so I accidentally hit her." After Xiao Lan heard Xiao Lin's words, she quickly explained. However, it might have been better if she didn't explain. After she explained, Xiao Lin became even angrier. "Misunderstanding? You dare to hit her for a mere misunderstanding. If it wasn't a misunderstanding, wouldn't you have killed her?" Xiao Lin said angrily. She knew that Lan always bullied her daughter in private, but she had never found any evidence. She didn't expect to catch it this time. How could she let go of such a rare opportunity? Therefore, from the beginning, she didn't plan to let Xiao Lan off easily. Aunt, how would I dare? I know that my younger cousin is your precious. How would I dare to bully her? I was really angry this time, and I made a mistake. Aunt, uncle, please don't be angry with me. I'll apologize to my younger cousin. Xiao Lan's voice was choked with sobs, and her beautiful eyes were filled with tears. After she finished speaking, she knelt on the ground with a plop and looked up at Xiao Lin and Yin Xian. Cousin, please forgive me. I didn't mean it. Xiao Lan said to Yin Xian. Cousin, what are you doing? Hurry up and get up. I can't afford it. Seeing this, Yin Xian also quickly said and bent down to help Xiao Lan up, but Xiao Lan refused to stand up. Yin Xian had no choice but to give up. However, she wouldn't let Xiao Lan put on a show of self-pity. Did he think that he would be fine after hitting her and kneeling down? How could it be so easy? This time, she wanted to settle both old and new scores. Thinking of this, Yin Xian said with a heavy heart, Cousin, are you forcing us to forgive you? Although you've always bullied me in private in the past, and even hit me this time, I really don't blame you. Who asked you to be in a bad mood? I can understand, but you've already beaten us. If you force us like this, even if we forgive you this time, we'll still feel uncomfortable. Why do you have to do this? What's more, I'm telling you the truth. I'm telling you this with good intentions, but not only did you not believe me, you even hit me. Yin Xian's cute face was full of grievances. Xian, what are you going to tell her? Xiao Lin heard Yin Xian's words and quickly asked. Before, when they had just walked into the room, they had heard the sound of a slap coming from inside. So they had quickly pushed the door open and entered, so they were not very clear about what had happened. Didn't I go to see my sister? She told me that cousin's injury would relapse again, but if she ate stimulating food, the relapse would happen even faster. After I heard this, I immediately came to tell cousin, but she didn't believe me. She even said that I was cursing her. Then he hit me. Yin Xian also said with tears in her eyes. Lana, was what Xianer said true? This is the misunderstanding you were talking about? Xiao Lin glared at him and questioned him loudly. Aunt, my injury has just recovered, and younger Biao's sister came to say such things. If it was anyone else, they would be angry. Xiao Lan explained in a low voice. Yup, sister. No one can stay calm when it comes to this kind of thing. Lan didn't mean it, so please forgive her. Ru Ping tried to smooth things over. She was afraid that this matter would anger Xiao Lin and her husband. Without their protection, the Xiao family would step on them. They were used to being arrogant in the Xiao family. Without their support, the Xiao family would take the opportunity to hit them when they were down. Aunt, cousin, I know it's my fault this time. I wasn't calm enough. Cousin, beat me up to vent your anger. As long as you're willing to forgive me for my unintentional mistake. Xiao Lan said with a sincere expression. Cousin, if you think that I can make up for your unintentional mistake by hitting you back, then you're gravely mistaken. If a dog bites you, can you bite the dog back? Yin Xian said with a faint smile. Since Xiao Lan kept saying that it was an unintentional mistake, then she could only treat Xiao Lan as a dog. However, wasn't this a little sorry for the cute dog? Her heart was filled with regret. Xianer's right. This matter isn't about you slapping Xian and Xian returning a slap to you. We already know the cause of this matter, and Lanner, I also want to tell you that everything Xianer has said to you is true. I've said these words to your parents before, but they don't believe me and even hope that they'll be lucky. As a result, you can only bear the consequences yourself. Xiao Lin's tone was very cold. After that, she took Yin Xian and turned to leave Xiao Lan's room. Aunt, sister, Xiao Lan and Xiao Hua shouted in unison, but Xiao Lin didn't even turn around. Brother-in-law, look at this. It's just a fight between children. Please don't take it to heart. Xiao Hua saw that Yin Ping was still there and said with an embarrassed expression, What a good fight between children. Lan, Xianer said you used to bully her in private. Is that true? Yin Ping asked with a cold smile. Uncle, how could this be possible? You also know how willful younger Biao's sister is. Xiao Lan said nervously. She didn't even dare to look at Yin Ping. If it was before today, she might have been able to deny it. However, after she was caught red-handed hitting Yin Xian, she wasn't so confident. Seeing Xiao Lan's guilty expression, Yin Ping already knew what was going on. He never thought that the Xiao Lan, who was always so well-behaved and sensible in front of him, would always bully his daughter in private. He still remembered that every time Xian complained to him, he would always side with Xiao Lan. Now that he thought about it, he was already so old, but he was still being played around by a little girl. It was really embarrassing. Besides, he also felt a little sorry for his daughter. Thinking of this, Yin Ping said, "Lan Er's injury doesn't seem to be a big deal now, so you can pack your things and go back to the Xiao family tomorrow. Don't come here anymore." "Brother-in-law, how could you do this? Are you trying to drive us away? Don't forget, you said you would give us an explanation." When Ru Ping heard that they had to leave, she immediately roared in dissatisfaction. Xiao Lan, on the other hand, didn't say a word and kept crying. Chapter 1429, As a Witness, 2. What kind of explanation do you want from me? Haven't I taken enough care of you all these years? But how did you repay me? I haven't even gotten an explanation for bullying my daughter in private. Don't you think you should give us an explanation? I don't think you need to wait until tomorrow. Pack your things and leave now. After Yin Ping finished speaking, he turned around and left without looking back. After receiving Yin Ping's orders, the Yin family's guards personally watched as Xiao Hua and his family of 3 packed up their things and personally sent them out of the Yin family's main residence. After Yin Ping left Xiao Lan's room, he went straight back to his own residence. Seeing that Yin Xian and Xiao Lin were talking and laughing in the room, and their mood was not affected, Yin Ping's heart was finally at ease. Seeing that her daughter had really grown up, she would probably be crying right now if it was the old her. "Xiana, how is it? Does your face still hurt?" Yin Ping had just stepped into the room when he asked with a face full of concern. "I'm fine now, father. Mother has applied some medicine on my face." Yin Xian said with a smile, obviously in a good mood. "What are you two talking about? Why are you smiling so happily?" Yin Ping saw that the swelling on his daughter's face had indeed subsided, so he changed the topic. "I don't know where Xian heard this joke from, but she's telling it to me right now." Xiao Lin said with a smile. "Oh, Xian should tell father about it too." Yin Ping said, "Father, that joke doesn't suit you. By the way, how's Uncle's family doing?" Yin Xian asked curiously. Xiao Lan had been caught red-handed when she hit her, so her father wouldn't let them off easily, right? "I've already invited them back to the Xiao family. They don't have to come here anymore." Yin Ping said indifferently. After he finished, he looked at Xiao Lin with some worry and said, "Sister Lin won't blame me, right? Brother Ping, why would I blame you? You've taken care of them enough, but they're not satisfied and want more. Besides, I know that Lan has bullied Xian a lot in the past, but Lan is too scheming, and I've never been able to find any evidence against her. This time, even if Brother Ping doesn't chase them away, I can't tolerate them anymore." Xiao Lin was still a little angry. After she finished speaking, she glared at her daughter resentfully. This girl had just told her that she could have avoided Xiao Lan's slap, but she deliberately did not do so to leave evidence. "Sister Lin, since you knew that Lan bullied Xian a lot, why didn't you tell me?" Yin Ping grumbled. "Father, I complained to you a lot when I was young. However, you've never sided with me, and Mother doesn't have any evidence. You also dote on Xiao Lan so much, so even if we tell you, you won't believe us." Yin Xian reminded her with an evil smile. She knew her father too well. No matter what her father did, he would always pay attention to evidence. Therefore, if she wanted him to stand on her side, she must have evidence. Otherwise, it would be useless no matter what she said. And Xiao Lan's previous efforts would all be in vain because of the irrefutable evidence this time. Xiao Lan would probably be very angry. When she thought of this, her mood became extremely excited. She felt that the slap was worth it. In the past I was wrong. Who would have thought that Xiao Lan, who looked so well-behaved on the outside, would always bully my daughter in private? Yin Ping said with an embarrassed face. "Father, I'm not the only one she's bullying. Many clansmen of the Yin family have been bullied by her, But those clansmen don't have a father who is the current patriarch or a brother who is the young master, so they all dare not speak out. Yin said honestly, "This kind of thing won't happen again. Father will never let them come to our house again." Yin Ping promised. Hee, this is great." Yin nodded happily. She would never see Xiao Lan at home again, and this fact made her feel particularly good. Just as Yin family of 3 was chatting, a guard suddenly walked in and whispered a few words to Yin Ping. After Yin Ping heard this, his face immediately became ugly. After the guard reported, he turned and left. Seeing this, Xiao Lin and Yin both asked in confusion, "What happened?" Xiao Hua's family followed Yin Bang to the second branch's courtyard to stay. Yin Ping sighed. What did Xiao Hua and the others want to do? Don't they know what the second household is planning? After Xiao Lin heard this, she growled angrily. The Yin family's first branch and second branch had been at odds for a long time. The first branch was led by his husband, while the second branch was led by Yin Bang. Although Yin Bang was a concubine's son, he had always believed that his aptitude and ability were no less than his husband's. Why should his husband be the substitute head of the family, while he could only obey because of his lower status? This fact made Yin Bang rather angry. She had been secretly trying to make things difficult for her husband. Xiao Hua and the others were aware of this, but now they were involved with them. Suddenly, Xiao Lin felt a deep disappointment in her heart. She felt that she had raised an ungrateful wolf who had betrayed her husband. Mother, they've always been that kind of people. It's not worth it to be angry with them. Don't be angry and harm your health. Yin saw her mother's expression and knew that her mother was angry. However, her uncle's family was not sensible people, and her uncle could not make any decisions at home. So she was not surprised at all that they could do such a thing. Yup, Sister Lin, don't be angry. Although Yin Bang always opposed me, Xiao Hua probably has no value to them. The only thing they can do is to sow discord between you two, but after Xiao Lan hit Yin and I kicked them out, there's no longer any friendship between us. Xiao Hua's family probably hates us because of this, so even if Yin Bang wanted to destroy it, he wouldn't have the chance. Yin Ping consoled her in a gentle voice. In truth, when he first heard the news, he had felt very uncomfortable. Although he had chased Xiao Hua and the others out, and even told them not to come back here in the future, if Xiao Hua really had some difficult things to do and needed his help, he would still help them. After all, he was his wife's brother. He just didn't think that Xiao Hua and the others would be so disappointing to get together with Yin Bang, and Yin Bang's goal was obvious. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.